Chapter 344. For the past 3 days, Li Shimin had been worried about the locusts and had no idea what to do. But he didn't expect Zhang Feng to come up with so many ideas just by chatting for a while. Although the burning method seemed a little vulgar, it made a lot of sense when he thought about it carefully. If it was near the Shirley Slope outside Chang'an City, he only needed to cut down all the weeds and trees near the Ba River Bridge that connected to Chang'an City. Then he only needed to set a fire and pour the pesticides that Zhang Feng mentioned on the fire. Wouldn't that be more effective? But why was this kid so obsessed with money this time? His 3 sentences were all about money. Could it be that there was a trick to it? Something was strange. Li Shimin thought for a while and asked, "Brother Zhang Feng, how are you going to deal with these locusts? The economy of Chang'an has just started. If you do this, won't it cause a conflict with the imperial court?" "How can that be?" This time, Zhang Feng was not happy. "Do you know that once this thing of mine is produced, it won't cause a conflict with the imperial court's cooperative, but it will further stimulate consumption?" "What?" Li Shimin was shocked. How could a small locusts be possible? "Haha, brother Zhang Feng, are you kidding me?" "Kidding?" Zhang Feng was furious. "I treat you as my brother, and you say I'm kidding? Have you ever seen me, Zhang Feng, joke?" Li Shimin curled his lips. Zhang Feng was instantly furious. "Hey, you don't believe me, do you? Come. Zhang Feng pulled Li Shimin to the backyard. He tied a rope to the tree in the backyard, and then spread oil paper under the tree. With a pull and a shake, the locusts fell on the paper. Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng was going to do. He watched carefully. Zhang Feng slowly moved the locusts from the ground into a basin. Then he filled the basin with water, sprinkled a large amount of salt, and slowly rubbed it before scooping it out of the water. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. What was he trying to do? He had no choice but to follow Zhang Feng to dry the cleaned locusts on the floor of the backyard. At this time, Zhang Feng said, "I said before that locusts have a high medicinal value, and they are an important Chinese medicine. They can treat kidney deficiency, and the effect of strengthening one's yang and kidney is 10 times better than that of insect eggs. Think about it. How much did you earn from the locust's eggs? Are there any objections?" "I don't think so. Do you know why?" Li Shimin scratched his head in confusion. Indeed, no one objected to the locust's eggs. Many people even saw it as a profitable business. Zhang Feng slapped Li Shimin's shoulder. "You don't understand, do you? As long as the publicity is done well, anything can be used for business. Think about it. You just ate the locusts. You said that people don't like it. Then, if I grind it into powder and sell it as bone-strengthening powder, do you think anyone will buy it? And the price at that time will be much higher. Now, a caddy of fried locusts can be sold for 3 to 5 copper coins. When the time comes, the price will be doubled. Think about it. If we sell it at such a high price, how much lower will the price be? Once the price is raised, even if the locusts don't have an army of chickens and ducks, all the people in Chang'an will go crazy to catch them." While they were talking, the water on the locusts had dried up. Zhang Feng grabbed a handful of locusts and looked at them. Then he led Li Shimin into the kitchen. He set up the fire and heated the oil. When the oil was almost done, he poured the whole basket of locusts into it. Slurp! Li Shimin had never been in the kitchen before. He was scared by this scene and trembled all over. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes again. Not long after, a basket of yellow fried locusts was ready. But this time, Zhang Feng didn't eat it directly. Instead, he sprinkled some seasonings on it while it was hot. Then, he put it into a stone mill and gently crushed it into powder. Holding a handful of powder, Zhang Feng found a bowl and washed it with boiling water. Then, he handed it to Li Shimin. "Have a taste of this stuff." While talking, Zhang Feng and Li Shimin left the kitchen and returned to the hall again. Looking at the layer of oil floating in the bowl and the yellow soup, Li Shimin endured the discomfort and took a sip. The taste was still very good. It was more delicious than the mutton soup in the palace. Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. "I understand what you mean. Although locusts are not easy to sell now, they can be made into powder. Moreover, it's bone-strengthening powder. The taste is enough to be more delicious than mutton soup. If I didn't know about this thing, I would definitely think that it's some kind of delicacy. You mean to use this thing to turn waste into treasure, and then stimulate the economic market again, right? Smart. Zhang Feng couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. You're finally enlightened. But it also depends on the emperor. Although we're so optimistic now, after all, there is the precedent of the worm eggs. Maybe the emperor has already thought of some countermeasures. But I'm sure the emperor didn't think of the worm powder. So, Lao Li, what do you think of this source of income? Chapter 345. Li Shimin was also tempted. What about selling fried locusts one by one? Li Shimin dared to guarantee that there would be people hammering that person's head. But it was different now. As long as it was made into powder and added with some rice paste, or mixed with flour, wouldn't it become bone-strengthening powder? Looking at the layer of oil in the bowl and the tempting fragrance, Li Shimin endured the heat and blew on the sides of the bowl while carefully tasting it. The taste of this thing, if it was mixed with flour, although the quality would be reduced, but the price would be reduced by a lot. In this way, no one would be able to taste the locusts. Knowing that there was enough salt, who the F***ck would be able to taste the insects. Soon, the bowl of bone-strengthening powder was finished. Li Shimin smacked his lips and said, Brother Zhang Feng, can this thing really strengthen bones? Of course. All right, you want to buy a share? Li Shimin copied Zhang Feng and spread his hands. With such a huge profit, if I don't buy a share, wouldn't I be a fool? Okay, since you want to buy a share, then we'll follow the old rules. I'll provide the technology, and you'll provide the money and manpower. And this thing, if you find a good doctor, he'll tell you whether this thing can strengthen bones or not. If people with broken bones drink this thing, drinking a bowl is equivalent to drinking a bowl of meat and bone soup. Old Li, now you know how much profit you can make, right? As long as you find someone who can boast, I believe that even that dirt can make money. Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Are you asking someone to scam people? Scam people? Let me ask you. You've eaten the locust eggs and you've eaten the locusts. Let me ask you, how does it taste? Is the locust eggs working? Okay, I have to go back and think about it. If possible, I'll ask Old Sun and the others to do it to recover some losses. As they walked, Li Shimin said, As for the school, I've basically taken care of it. As for the carpentry work and the house renovation, someone will come to you later. You just need to tell them what you want to know. After Li Shimin finished speaking, he took away the rest of the fried locusts and the locust powder in the dustpan. He claimed that he was bringing it back for them to taste, but Zhang Feng seriously suspected that this guy wanted to go back and try it. When Li Shimin went out, Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, Lao Li, although this thing is good, you have to control. Otherwise, if you can't get out of bed, don't blame me for not telling you. The effect of this thing is very strong. Zhang Feng didn't hide his voice at all. Li Shimin heard this and hurriedly ran away with a black face. The surrounding area was basically filled with Jin Wuguard's spies, as well as that trash Wei Shuyu. If these people knew about this, where would he put his face? Seeing that Li Shimin had run away. Only then did Zhang Feng put away the locusts and locust powder on the table. He made himself a bowl and added a spoonful of sugar. Only then did he lie back on the recliner happily. He drank some wine and ate the fried locusts while thinking about the tricycle. Now that he had the most important rubber, how should he make the frame of the tricycle? Should he smelt it? But he was too lazy to tinker with those things. The key was that it was too hot. Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at the iron kettle in front of him, and his eyes lit up. That's right. If he dismantled this thing and found someone to make all the parts, he could make a smaller crucible and some tenons. Wouldn't that solve the problem? The more he thought about it, the more excited Zhang Feng became. Motherf ***, I am a genius. When the time came, he would ride the tricycle to Chang'an City for a stroll. It would definitely be the most beautiful scenery in Chang'an City. You have a carriage, but I also have my tricycle, don't I? And I can buy groceries and so on, don't I? Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of a spectacular scene. A group of loafers wearing sunglasses, wearing suits, riding bicycles, wearing big brimmed hats. This Damn! Just thinking about it made him excited. The more he thought about it, the more Zhang Feng wanted to make a tricycle. How could he fall asleep now? He hurriedly got out of the tavern and found Go Zi and Zhu Zi in the river under a big willow tree. He asked, "I have an extremely important matter right now. Do you want to help me?" When they heard that Zhang Feng had something to do, the two of them didn't even wear clothes. They climbed into the river naked. The women on the street couldn't stop cursing. "Brother Feng, tell us, what do you want us to do?" The two of them stared at Zhang Feng excitedly with their black eyes. Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, "Do you know the old blacksmith in the west of the city? I have something to do here. You go and invite him here. Tell him that I have a big business deal for him. This Uncle One is 80 years old. Do you want me to find Dumbo for you? Although that guy is a little stupid, he has great strength." Zhu Zi suggested a different idea. However, Zhang Feng shook his head. "Go and find Uncle One. This job isn't heavy. It's just a craftsmanship job. Tell Uncle One what I said. If he does it, I'll give him 100 copper coins first. Of course, if it's iron, it'll be on him. Tell him how much it costs and I'll give him the money." Chapter 346. Taiji Palace, Imperial Study. As soon as Li Shimin entered, he didn't even have time to change his clothes before he asked, "Shao Gizi, sort out all the memorials related to the locusts for me." "Yes." Seeing Li Shimin's gloomy face, Shao Gizi hurriedly selected memorials from the mountain of documents. Li Shimin also sat on the soft couch and flipped through them one by one. A locust plague has broken out in Jiannan province. The locusts are suspected to have come from Tubo territory. Countless victims of the Tubo disaster are rushing to the Tang dynasty territory. When he saw the memorial, Li Shimin immediately read through it and said, "Thoroughly investigate the source of the locusts and the losses. Expel all the people from Tubo." Then, Li Shimin looked at the next memorial. This memorial was related to Shannan province. A locust plague has broken out in Bazhou, Maozhou, Yazhou, and Jiazhou in Shannan province. The farmland has been severely damaged, and there are even signs of the locusts devouring livestock. A locust plague has broken out in Hunan province, Yaozhou, Xingzhou, Minzhou, and many other places. The forest has been severely damaged, and the food has been greatly damaged. However, there are no casualties for the time being. Li Shimin took a deep breath and looked at Long Yudeo's booklet. He took a deep breath. Then he slowly flipped open the memorial. There were only a few words in the memorial. However, each word was like a heavy hammer that struck Li Shimin's heart. A locust plague has broken out in Chotzi City and other places. There is no oasis within 1,000 miles. After reading this, Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but tighten. Summon Wei Zhang, Fang Xianling, Zhang Sun, and Du Ruhui to the palace immediately. Li Shimin slapped the memorial hard. He had read 5 memorials, but there were still dozens of them on his desk. What did this mean? This meant that the locust outbreak had reached a point where it couldn't be delayed. But most of them were concentrated near Tubo, and the south of the Tang dynasty was basically unaffected. What did this mean? This showed that the locust plague was really as Zhang Feng had said before. The locust plague in the Tang dynasty was basically nothing, but the key was that after the locust plague in Tubo, the locust plague directly devoured Tubo, then migrated to the Tang dynasty. Previously, Li Shimin thought that Zhang Feng was talking about next year's locust plague. This year's locust eggs had basically been cleared out from Longyu to Chang'an, and even the Tang dynasty. However, he had forgotten one thing. That was the locust plague that Zhang Feng had mentioned in Tubo. At this moment, Li Shimin suddenly understood why he had said that there would be an irreversible disaster at the end of the year even though the locusts were almost completely under control this year. He had thought that this was Zhang Feng's guess. But from these reports and all the plans for Tubo, Li Shimin suddenly felt a kind of pressure. An irresistible pressure. A moment later, Wei Zhang and the others hurried into the imperial study of Taiji Palace. Seeing Li Shimin's gloomy face and thinking about something with his head lowered, they didn't dare to disturb him and waited quietly. After an unknown amount of time, only then did Li Shimin slowly wake up. He looked at the people standing in front of him and waved his hand tiredly, motioning for them to sit down. Then, he said, "How's the investigation of the locust plague? Your Majesty, I have thoroughly investigated all the towns around Chang'an and found that although the locust plague was fierce this time, Chang'an was already prepared. Although there was a loss of grain, it was not a total loss. Now, all the wheat has been harvested, only the corn has been lost. In addition, Chang'an City's cooperative this time, basically every household has stored grain. I'm asking about the locust plague, nothing else." Li Shimin interrupted Du Ruhui's report and asked. Hearing this, Du Ruhui took a deep breath and said, "Your Majesty, about this locust plague, I have received the most detailed report. The black mass of locusts will cross the Qinling Mountains and reach Chang'an City in 5 days. I'm afraid that by then, there will be no crops in Chang'an City anymore." "What? 5 days?" Li Shimin's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly asked, "Then, what about Longyu Dao? And what about Jianan Dao and other places?" Li Shimin only wanted to know if the locust plague had broken out completely or if, as he had guessed, the locust plague had really moved south from Tubo and Longyu Dao. But all the information he received, every single one of them made him despair. Because the locust plague this time was really as he had guessed. It had basically spread from the north to the south. What did this mean? This meant that he still had 5 days left. "Have you thought of any way to resist it?" "Well, Your Majesty, I have indeed thought of a way." Fang Xianling was a little hesitant. But seeing that the emperor did not say anything, he said tentatively, "I think that if we follow the method that Brother Zhangfeng came up with and use an army of chickens and ducks, it might work, but the effect. Also, since you can even eat the eggs of locusts, then even though the locusts look a little ugly and horrifying, you should be able to do that too." Chapter 347. How could they not know that His Majesty had left the palace? Moreover, His Majesty had not even changed his clothes. If they were not fools, they would definitely know that His Majesty had gone to Brother Zhangfeng's place. Thinking of this, on the way to the imperial study, they squatted by the roadside and thought about what Brother Zhangfeng had said before. Only then did they come up with this wonderful idea. This was the idea that Brother Zhangfeng had mentioned earlier. Wasn't this the right time to use it? However, after saying it out loud, they felt a burst of strangeness. That was because His Majesty's face had become unusually ugly at this moment. This scene made the hearts of these wily old foxes skip a beat. Could it be that this was what His Majesty and Brother Zhangfeng were talking about? They could not help but look at each other. At the same time, they sat up quietly and waited for His Majesty's reprimand. Sure enough, not long after they sat down, Li Shimin sighed and said, "At first, I thought that you would come up with a different idea on this matter, but now it seems that this, alas, Your Majesty, there are other ways. I've looked up the previous methods that were suitable for controlling the locusts, but compared to the current situation, they are basically a drop in the bucket. So we think that the best way now is to use fire." All right, Li Shimin waved his hand with a headache. "Where do you want me to burn? Burn the imperial city? Or burn somewhere else?" "Your Majesty, we are guilty of the death penalty." Wei Zhang and the others hurriedly knelt down. Li Shimin didn't even glance at them. He waved his hand and said, "Actually, I know that you also understand. After I came back from that small tavern, I won't beat around the bush. Brother Zhangfeng did have 3 ways. The first one is the fire attack that you mentioned. Let's make use of the favorable terrain. Let's talk about the current situation." After Li Shimin finished speaking, he pointed at the map on the wall, which was the area of Chang'an City, and said, "Look, this is the area of the Shirley Slope. Brother Zhangfeng's idea is to cut a fire belt between Ba River and Chang'an City, and then set fire to the locusts here." This Wei Zhang and the others looked at the map. When they heard Li Shimin's words, their expressions changed. Previously, they had only thought of setting the place on fire, but as for how to do it, they really didn't know. Especially in the Imperial City and Chang'an City, they couldn't possibly set the entire place on fire, right? But at this moment, Li Shimin spoke again. "We did not expect that you would not even think of a way." Li Shimin had mixed feelings in his heart. He said lightly, You have all dealt with medicinal herbs before. The Dragon Boat Festival has just ended. Have you forgotten something? Are you talking about mugwort and realgar? When Wei Zheng heard this, his expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly knelt and said, "This subject did think of it before, but I did not know how to use it. That's why this subject is stupid. Please enlighten us, Your Majesty." "Please enlighten us, Your Majesty." Li Shimin waved his hand. "Do you remember what the beacon tower is used for? Beacon fire." When Wei Zheng heard this, he hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, the beacon tower is a signal tower used to transmit emergency military information." "Yes, that's it." Li Shimin pointed at the map and said, "I just looked at the memorials. According to all the memorials, the locust outbreak is concentrated in Longyu, west of Jianan, and mainly around Tubo and other countries. If we light the beacon fires in these places at the same time, and we change all the fuel into medicinal herbs, insecticides, what do you think will happen?" Fang Xuanling's eyes suddenly burst out a burst of light. "Your Majesty, you mean to use fire to attack?" "That's right. Buzz." Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Zhang Sun Wuji, and Wei Zheng, who had been silent all this time, felt a muffled thunder in their minds at the same time. That's right. Jianan Road, Shannon Road, and Longyu Road were the three places where the locust plague was the most serious. Then, there were more than 1,000 beacon towers in these places. If so many beacon towers and isolation belts were to light up the medicinal herbs at the same time, then, wouldn't it be easy to eliminate the locusts? Was this matter really that simple? However, at this moment Zhang Sun Wuji, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Your Majesty, although this method can eliminate most of the locusts, if the dosage of the medicinal herbs is not right and the wind blows randomly, the effect. So, what I mean is, if we can cooperate with the chicken and duck army at this time, won't it be twice the result with half the effort?" When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but feel happy. "Your Majesty, Lord Zhangsun is right. If we can eliminate the remaining locusts with the chicken and duck army, in less than 3 months, the locusts in the Tang dynasty will be wiped out." 3 months? Li Shimin shook his head lightly. "I can't wait for 3 months. I want you to completely eliminate this plague of locusts within a month." Chapter 348. When everyone heard this, they could not help but reveal bitter expressions. "Your Majesty, this plague of locusts is a punishment from the heavens." "What punishment?" Before Du Ruhui could finish, Li Shimin interrupted him. With a wave of his hand, palace maids entered the imperial study with large bowls of something with an alluring aroma. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "The weather is hot. Drink something good to moisten your throats and think carefully about how to deal with it. Then, tell me if this is a natural disaster or something else." As he spoke, the palace maids opened the lids of the white marble bowls in front of them. Instantly, the alluring aroma filled the hall. Everyone was puzzled, but they still stood up and said in unison, "Thank you, Your Majesty." After that, they looked at the bowls of something pale yellow and covered in oil. They couldn't tell what it was. They gently scooped up a spoonful and put it into their mouths. But in the next moment, their puzzlement disappeared. Everyone's faces were filled with surprise and surprise. "How is it? How does it taste?" Li Shimin didn't tell them that it was locust powder. He believed that if he had told them in advance, these bastards would have 100 ways to stop drinking it. But that wasn't what he wanted to see. He wanted to wait until they finished drinking before revealing the ingredients. It wasn't that Li Shimin had a bad taste, but that these guys couldn't think of a way. Could it be that none of the civil and military officials could come up with a perfect plan? Therefore, he wanted to use this to punish them. On the other hand, he wanted to leave a deep impression on them, just like when they ate the eggs. This was the usual tactic of a monarch. Rub first and then use force. After a while, the 4 of them finished drinking. At this moment, Li Shimin waved his hand again. The palace maids held up a large jade plate. The plate was covered with a red cloth again, looking very mysterious. Li Shimin asked, "My dear officials, how does this soup taste?" They ate it very confusedly, so they ate very slowly. The taste of this thing was indeed delicious. It had the freshness of fish and crab, the texture of cattle and sheep, and even the texture of frogs. But even if they ate it slowly, they still couldn't taste what it was. While drinking, they also pondered about the emperor's expression. They saw that the emperor's expression was strange, but they really couldn't figure out what this thing was. At this moment, when the palace maids came up with the jade plate and the emperor asked again, they finally spoke. "Your Majesty, this thing is really something that I haven't eaten in all these years. Could it be the seafood that Jin La's tribute? Or a treasure from the western region?" When Li Shimin heard this, he laughed and said, "How is this Jin La or something from the western regions? This thing is originally from the Tang dynasty." Well, everyone was speechless. Looking at the clean bowl, the crowd was unable to figure out how exactly this thing was made. Li Shimin said lightly, "Let's talk about the main effect of this thing first. I know that over the years you have worked hard for the Tang dynasty. In the early years, you even fought all over the country for the establishment of the Tang dynasty. Needless to say, your bodies are a little weak. And these days, I'm also worried when I see your white hair." Li Shimin said what was in his heart, but Wei Zhang and others choked. They hurriedly knelt on the ground with a plop. "Your Majesty, this is what I should do. Your Majesty, you don't have to do this. Forget it. Forget it. When people get old, they like to sigh." Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned for everyone to get up. Then he continued, "Zhang-sun, don't you always feel pain in your knees? And your body is weak. And Prime Minister Wei, if you don't have money, just tell me. Don't be so poor all day. People who don't know better will think that I'm deliberately embezzling. Look at your court robe. It's torn. Get a new one." Li Shimin's words made everyone even more confused. They were talking about locusts. Why did the emperor suddenly change the topic? However, the emperor did not say anything. Everyone could only suppress their doubts and wait for the emperor to speak. Li Shimin sighed with emotion and said, "The thing you drank just now is called bone-strengthening powder. Brother Zhangfeng said that this thing can not only strengthen your physique, but this bowl is equivalent to the nutrition of a bowl of meat soup. I don't know anything about nutrition, but I drank a bowl. I think Brother Zhangfeng won't trick me, so I'll let you have a taste. If you think it's delicious, I'll reward you handsomely." Everyone trembled with excitement when they heard that. "Your Majesty, you don't have to do this." Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Li Shimin stood up with a smile and helped everyone up. He pretended to warn them. "Although this is good stuff, I have to warn you. I heard that it's very effective in strengthening your sex drive. You all work hard for the court, so I also hope that your children can flourish. So, you all must control yourself." Chapter 349. What did he mean? Aphrodisiac? What did Brother Zhangfeng do? They couldn't help but think of the locust eggs that Zhangfeng got before. That thing seemed to have the effect of aphrodisiac and kidney strengthening. Could it be? But when they thought about it carefully, the locust eggs had already turned into grasshoppers. That was impossible. They couldn't help but feel more confused, but they still thanked Li Shimin profusely for his reward. Li Shimin didn't say anything more, but said directly, "Actually, you've all seen this thing before." While speaking, Li Shimin personally lifted the white jade plate placed in the middle of them, revealing what was inside. At the same time, a group of palace maids seemed to have been prepared. Several palace maids stood beside them, holding a copper basin in their hands, waiting quietly. But when they saw what was in the plate, their faces suddenly changed. "Locusts? Are these locusts? I should have thought of it earlier. What we just drank is... Wretch! Wretch! Wah!" Now everyone understood in an instant. They couldn't help but turn pale as paper and vomit loudly. Finally, they knew why these palace maids were holding the jade plate, why the emperor kept saying that, and why they couldn't help but think of the locust eggs when the emperor mentioned aphrodisiac. Damn it, it's locusts. After everyone finished vomiting, Li Shimin sat beside them, took out a few deep-fried golden locusts from the jade plate, and threw them into his mouth. He even chewed with relish, making crunching sounds. Everyone seriously suspected that the emperor was punishing them, but they didn't dare to say it. Li Shimin looked at them with some disdain. You ate the locust eggs as if they were treasures. But I can eat them, but you can't eat them? Li Shimin pretended to be angry. Instantly, the four people felt like they were facing a disaster. They hurriedly stood up and said, "Your subjects dare not." Li Shimin then waved his hand and said, Okay, don't be like that. You've all heard the effects of this thing. Go back and try it first. I've already prepared 3 caddies of locust powder for each of you. No, it's now called bone-strengthening powder, and 3 caddies of fried locust. Tonight, you'll know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Furthermore, this is also my 3rd plan. Li Shimin put away his smile and said solemnly, Now you all know that everyone thinks that this is a pest, a punishment from the heavens. Not only that, but the financial system of the newly established cooperative is also showing signs of collapse. The people have lost their way to make money and have no food. How can they not panic? This guy, you can't let him be idle. Once he's idle, he'll amplify the fear in his heart. Think of a way to earn money from the locust eggs. Even the locust eggs can be used. Why can't I turn these locusts into treasures? Li Shimin himself didn't realize that after being with Zhang Feng for so long, he actually regarded himself as a businessman. But thinking about it carefully, wasn't this what the Tang dynasty needed now? He wanted to take control of the economy. He wanted this country, which was in ruins, to be able to recover its economy in a short period of time. He wanted it to be strong again. This was also the meaning of the Wei River Alliance. But now, heaven didn't do as he wished. He originally thought that this locust plague was managed before, and Zhang Feng kept saying that it was to prevent next year's locust plague. But he forgot one essential thing. That was, without today's reserves, where would next year's locust plague come from? This year's locust eggs were almost all dug out. Where would this locust plague come from? But now he understood. Zhang Feng had been planning this locust plague since early in the morning. From the beginning of targeting Tubo to now, all the plans, including the food, were basically to eliminate the locust plague from the root. Locusts could fly. Although the Tang dynasty didn't have locust eggs, Tubo did. He ignored this fundamental problem. He only saw that the locust plague of the Tang dynasty was gone. But now, reality gave Li Shimin a hard slap. This slap not only woke Li Shimin up, but also made him understand a truth. If he wanted to control the locust plague, he had to start from the root. Thinking of this, Li Shimin put his hands behind his back, looked at the flying locusts outside the window, and said faintly, Although I didn't receive the memorial, I know that Guanlong will definitely not let go of this opportunity to create public opinion. So, I think we should start from the root of the bad habits of the people. Only by letting everyone know that the locust plague isn't the so-called natural disaster, but a good gift from God to the Tang dynasty can we solve this problem perfectly from the root. As for this bone-strengthening powder and this delicacy, I have decided that tomorrow morning, I will invite everyone to try these 2 delicacies. I don't believe that under the allure of these 2 things, who can resist their allure? Chapter 350. Li Shimin's words were sonorous and forceful. Wei Zhang and the others finally understood Li Shimin's purpose. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted, Your Majesty is wise. Forget it. Forget it. It would be great if you were wise. Li Shimin shook his head. It's just a business deal. It's to let the people of the world forget this disaster in such a time of crisis, and let this disaster, these locusts all over the sky, become copper coins in the people's pockets. I'm satisfied. Reporting. However, at this moment, little Gizi hurried in. But seeing that Wei Zhang and the others were present, he hesitated. Li Shimin waved his robe and said, It's fine. Say it. Yes. Your Majesty, Tubo's envoy urgently requests an audience with you. He will arrive in Chong, and tomorrow morning. What? So soon? Didn't he just go back? This is it for? Wei Zhang and the others could not help but focus on the plate of locusts on the table. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Pass down the order. Honglu Temple officials are to receive the envoy according to etiquette. Yes, Your Majesty. Little Gizi hurried away. Li Shimin smiled. Dear ministers, The god of wealth of the Tang dynasty is here. Your Majesty, you mean? Zhang's son Wuji heard this and could not help but ask. Li Shimin waved his hand and dismissed all the palace maids and guards at the door. Then he sat in the middle of the four and asked them to eat the locusts. He said, Zhang-son, how did the matter of the retired emperor's birthday last time go? Replying to your Majesty, Tubo's envoy said that he wanted to find a way to deal with the drought. After many twists and turns, yesterday, Tubo's grain had already arrived in Chong, and Long Yu Dao's vaults. This subject has also delivered the water wheel to Tubo. This subject has calculated that this is basically all of Tubo's food reserves for this year. Although there is still a surplus, this subject believes that they will not be able to survive past the end of the year after encountering such a locust plague. All right, well done. Li Shimin slapped his thigh. Then he said, the plan has already begun. Now think about it. When Brother Zhangfeng made this plan, what did he say? When everyone heard this, they thought about it carefully and could not help but be aghast. It turned out that the Zhangfeng brothers had already calculated all of this in the morning. First, they used the water wheel blueprint to deal with the drought in exchange for Tubo's fatal attraction. Then, they took advantage of the Tubo people's desire and public opinion on this matter and had no choice but to sign a contract with the Tang dynasty again in exchange for the technology. But now, the locusts finally broke out. This time, the account book that Tubo's brother made to the Tang dynasty was raised again. What was this? This was Brother Zhangfeng tying Tubo firmly to the Tang dynasty's waist and working for the Tang dynasty for free. This, at that time, although everyone was excited when they heard it, they more or less did not take it seriously. But now, if Tubo really came for the plague of locusts, then, at this time, everyone only felt the horror of Zhangfeng. Every time he made a targeted suggestion, he could make a country a plaything of the Tang dynasty in his hands. How terrifying! This was what it meant to destroy the world with a smile. This was even more terrifying than killing Tubo with real swords and spears. Your Majesty, this Brother Zhangfeng, is he really a god? Wei Zhang took a deep breath. He asked in horror. Li Shimin smiled bitterly. I also want Brother Zhangfeng to be a god. But the truth is the truth. He is just a mortal. Everyone was silent. Everyone thought of Zhangfeng's plan to deal with the Tuyuhun and the Turks again, and they could not help but have goosebumps. This was simply too terrifying. Fortunately, Brother Zhangfeng was from the Tang dynasty. If he was from Tubo or another country, then... Right. Li Shimin's expression suddenly changed. He asked, immediately send a message to Cheng Yaojin and ask him whether the Turks were affected by this plague of locusts. Your Majesty, I was just about to report this. Wei Zheng's expression was grave, but his body was trembling. His face was a little red. Your Majesty, this morning, I received a report from the Secretarial Bureau. It said that Yuzhou Yi Ting and Chotzi sent a secret report that a large number of locusts had entered the Tang dynasty from the Turks. Even the situation in Yuzhou has become more serious. If we combine this with this, I think that the locusts must have crossed the Longyu Road from the Tuyuhun and entered the Turks. Then, from Yuzhou, they entered the Tang dynasty. So, the Turks must have suffered a devastating plague of locusts. Good. Li Shimin heard this and also excitedly slammed the table. This is the most exciting news I have received in recent days. Pass down the order. Quickly find out all the information about the Turks. I want to see how Tuli and Shelly can escape from my control. Also, have people keep an eye on the people from Guanlong, especially on the border. If they are found to have business dealings with the Turks, Tubo, and the others, then... As he spoke, Li Shimin's eyes flashed with killing intent. The four hurriedly got up. We understand. Reporting. At this moment, little Gizi entered the imperial study again. As soon as he entered, little Gizi hurriedly knelt on the ground and said, Your Majesty, the envoy from Tuyuhun is also here. Chapter 351. Locusts. The locusts all over the sky made it impossible for people to go out. At this time, in Chang'an City, in addition to the locusts all over the sky, there were only a few chickens and ducks left. They swaggered on the street, and from time to time, They would lower their heads to pick up the locusts on the ground and take a few bites. Then, they would shake their bright feathers and walk slowly on the street again. There were even pigs, cows, and sheep tied up in the alley, wagging their tails and humming as they ate the locusts. Obviously, the locusts were delicious. The pigs couldn't help wagging their tails and smacking their lips. There was also a pile of saliva flowing down from the corners of their mouths to the ground. Although no one had fed them for a long time, the pigs, cows, and sheep all had big bellies. This was the current scene in Chang'an City. Some people who went out were also walking in a hurry with their heads lowered. Many patrolling soldiers had burned the locusts. Even though the market was open now, no one went to the market. Except for the patrolling soldiers who were cursing the locusts with their necks locked. Few people could be seen alive. It was like a dead zone. However, in Huitong Fong, today, unexpectedly, everyone could smell a strange, unpleasant smell in the house. Everyone frowned and sniffed, but no one dared to go out to have a look. Because of this thing. Perhaps it was caused by the natural disaster. Whose house do you think he burned down? But it didn't seem like it. Looking out through the crack of the door, there were only locusts. And this unpleasant smell came from Zhang Feng's tavern. At this time, Zhang Feng was squatting in the backyard of the tavern. Piles of mugwort, musk, and other things were burning around the walls of the courtyard. When all the locusts flew over the courtyard, they didn't even have the chance to show off their might before falling to the ground as if they were drunk. Then they jumped a few times on the ground and stopped moving. In the middle of the courtyard, Zhang Feng was squatting on the ground, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan. Waves of fishy stench accompanied by rolling black smoke slowly spiraled in the air before being scattered by the locusts. Although Zhang Feng was sweating all over at this moment, his face was filled with excitement as he looked at the red-hot stove. Soon, as long as the rubber is successfully refined, I only need to tinker with a sand model to make a tire. Then I can Feng Zi, open the door. Zhang Feng was fantasizing about riding a tricycle or a bicycle to show off in front of Chen Tiniu, Lao Li, and the others. Old He's urgent question pulled him back to reality. Zhang Feng hurriedly dealt with the things that were used to refine rubber. Then he hurried out and opened the door for Uncle Ho. As soon as the door was opened, Old Ho was carrying a huge gunny sack and panting heavily. His gunny sack and his body were densely covered with locusts. "What are you doing? Why did you take so long to open the door?" Old Ho muttered as he took the opportunity to unload the big sack on his shoulder into the backyard. He then looked at the strange thing and asked, "What is it?" Zhang Feng shrugged. "I can't go out, can I? I'm tinkering with something fun." "Something fun?" Old Ho shook his head. "Use this bag of soft sand sparingly. It wasn't easy for me to get it for you from outside the city." "Okay." Zhang Feng rubbed his hands excitedly. This time, he finally had the mold to make a tire. He gestured for Old Ho to go to the front hall. Zhang Feng took the opportunity to fish out a few bottles of fruits that were frozen at the bottom of the water tank before going to the front hall. There were no tools to freeze fruits in ancient times. Even if there were, Zhang Feng didn't have the time to do it now. All fruits and the like, if he wanted to freeze them, he would have to either sink them to the bottom of a well or put them under a large water tank. He quickly made 3 dishes from the kitchen. Old Ho was already drinking by himself. "Feng Zi, don't go anywhere during this period of time. I just went out and heard from the guards at the city gate that yesterday afternoon and night, when the city gate was about to be closed, the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun came again." "Oh? Again? What are they doing here?" Zhang Feng took the opportunity to ask. Old He drank his wine and ate his dishes. Then he said, "Who knows? I think it's related to this disaster. You didn't hear it. The envoys that came this time are called poor. They didn't even have a decent gift." When Zhang Feng heard this, a subtle smile flashed across his eyes. "They're finally here? Looks like I guessed right again. Their plague of locusts has reached an uncontrollable stage. Sigh, this is money. Sometimes you have to earn it even if you don't want to." Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Then why can't I go out? Isn't it because you like to cause trouble too much? This time, I heard that Tubo wants to form an alliance with the Tang dynasty. It's very likely that His Majesty will invite Jingshu from Yanlai restaurant to play music. You should think twice. If His Majesty finds out about you and Jingshu at this time, if he gets angry, you... When Zhang Feng heard this, although his expression turned ugly, he still shrugged and said, I won't. Don't worry. Chapter 352. Political Announcement Hall. It wasn't time for court yet, but there were already palace maids and eunuchs in the political announcement hall using mugwort, sulfur, and other things to smoke the locusts in the room. Even the Honglu Temple was using this method on the way from the Vermilion Bird Bridge to the political announcement hall. And this method, which the emperor had gotten from an unknown source, was actually able to make all the locusts in the imperial city disappear overnight. Now, the glazed tiles of the imperial city, the white marble floor, and the lake in the imperial garden were densely covered with the corpses of the locusts. And the emperor actually asked them to pack up these disgusting insects. This was what puzzled them the most. But this was the emperor's order, and they didn't dare to disobey. They could only obediently carry it out. The bell rang at 5 o'clock. Finally, after everyone had sorted out the locusts' corpses, it came late. Dong, dong, dong. With the sound of the bell, a group of purple, red, and green-robed officials lined up with white jade tablets in their hands and entered the locusts. But today, everyone was shocked. First of all, the locusts that filled the sky could not be seen the moment they stepped into the imperial city. Even the deeper they went into the imperial palace, the more they couldn't see a fly or a mosquito. Strange. This didn't make sense. Everyone turned to look at the city gate behind them. In the sky outside the city gate, there were still dense locusts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. But what was going on? The locusts didn't dare to enter the imperial city? Was it a favor from the heavens? Or, everyone entered the political announcement hall in surprise. Once they entered the political announcement hall, they smelled a burst of incense. This smell was very strange. It had the fragrance of flowers, but there was also a faint musk and the smell of mugwort. This made everyone even more puzzled. But just as everyone looked around in confusion, trying to find a locust in the corner of the door, Xiao Gizi's voice sounded from behind the door. The emperor has arrived. Kneel. Everyone hurriedly stopped talking and hurriedly bowed. This subject respectfully welcomes the emperor. No need for formalities. With the crown on his head, Li Shimin walked up the stairway to heaven with a majestic gait. He waved his hand and said, Sit! But before everyone could sit down, someone hurriedly stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, this subject has something to report. Li Shimin glanced at the newcomer. He was a member of the Shandong landowning class. Li Shimin waved his hand. Speak. Reporting to Your Majesty, I investigated in Chang'an City yesterday and found that all the people there were in a state of panic and discontent. It seemed that Your Majesty had done something to provoke the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people, so the heavens decided to punish you. Bastard! Lord Sun, you actually dare to openly shout in the royal court. Is this what a subject should do? In an instant, Zhang Sun Wuji raised his sleeve and scolded. Your Majesty, this person actually dared to humiliate Your Majesty in court. This is a capital offense. Lord Zhang Sun. Lord Sun stood up straight. Seeing that the emperor did not speak, he coldly looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and said, Go and ask around. Also, go and check the documents of the Ministry of Justice. Look, in all the dynasties, when have locusts been able to wreak havoc in the imperial city? Go and ask around. This is something that I and many people present here heard with our own ears. I'm just stating the facts. Are people not allowed to speak the truth in the royal court? Oh? Li Shimin sneered and waved his hand to stop Zhang Sun Wuji. He said, Then why haven't I seen a single locust in this vast imperial palace? Why did I hear that the locusts were a treasure given to the Tang dynasty by the heavens? Hearing this, all the ministers were shocked. That's right. In the imperial city today, let alone a locust, I didn't even see a fly. Is this really? Lord Go, you saw it clearly during yesterday's morning court session. Let's not talk about anything else. Even the political announcement hall was filled with locusts. Tell me, what is this? Then, where are the locusts now? They must have used some method to disperse the locusts. Good. Come on, come on, come on. Why don't you drive away a locust for me? Cheng Yaojin. How big is the imperial city? Who has the ability to drive away all the locusts in the imperial palace overnight? Is it an immortal? The more Cheng Yaojin spoke, the angrier he became. With his hands on his waist, he pointed at the group of civil officials and roared. What the F***ck are you talking about? I think you just don't want to see His Majesty live a good life, right? Hearing this, all the generals began to jeer. F***ck. These sons of B***cheese only think about making money and getting promoted all day long. Once something happens, they splash dirty water on His Majesty. Are you still the ministers of the Tang dynasty? In my opinion, these locusts must have been stirred up by this group of civil officials, and the rumors in Chong and city were definitely made up by this group of B***stards. Otherwise, who the F***ck would do such a thing to end their family line? You're slandering us. How dare you? Old man studied the way of Confucius and Mencius. How could he do such a dirty thing? Chapter 353. The civil officials were anxious. They could no longer care about their usual manners. Their faces were red as they quarreled with the generals in the court. From time to time, some civil officials could not win against the generals. They would kneel on the ground angrily and beg the emperor to punish them. At the same time, they would scold the generals for insulting them. However, Li Shimin did not do anything. Instead, he looked on with a smile. This was a scheme that he had planned. He had long wanted to teach this group of civil officials a lesson. They always carried the teachings of Confucius and Mencius, but what did they do? When something happened, they did not say anything. Once something happened, it would be Li Shimin's fault. Fine, can't you quarrel? I'll let you quarrel to your heart's content today. If you don't quarrel enough, no one is allowed to leave the court. At this time, the civil officials were anxious when they saw that Li Shimin did not care about anything. Who were they? They were Confucian scholars who practiced the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. What kind of people were these soldiers? Who gave them the right to question the teachings of Confucius and Mencius? Lord Son of the Guanglu Temple pointed at Cheng Yaojin and shouted with trembling lips, "Brute! You brute! What else can you do besides throwing a few punches? A few days ago, this old man heard that outside the city, you used the emperor's name to detain the rebels. You disregarded the safety of the people and forcibly arrested them. Moreover, you did it in front of everyone. Don't you agree?" "Yes." Cheng Yaojin clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. This group of rebels insulted the emperor in public and even wanted to assassinate the crown prince. Lord Zhongsun, according to the laws of the Tang dynasty, what should be the punishment for such a person? Zhongsun Wuji glanced at Cheng Yaojin and said calmly, "You insulted the emperor in public and attempted to assassinate the crown prince. 9 generations of your family will be executed." Zhongsun Wuji, how come this old man doesn't find you pleasing to the eye? When did you wear the same pants as that boorish fellow Cheng Yaojin? As the Minister of Justice, you actually... Zhongsun Wuji also gave up. What the F***ck? You can scold me if you want to. But why the F***ck do you have to drag me into this? Sun Dahai, how dare you question the laws of the Ministry of Justice? Do you want me to ask His Majesty to let you copy the laws of the Tang dynasty 100 times? You what? Don't tell me that you, Minister of Guanglu Temple, haven't even read the laws of the Tang dynasty? Then aren't you neglecting your duties as the Minister of Guanglu Temple? Zhongsun Wuji took the opportunity to ask. Sun Dahai was speechless. However, at this moment the people from the imperial astronomer jumped out again. "Lord Zhongsun, I have observed the heavenly phenomena in this matter, and it is actually Mars guarding my heart." "You, old liar, you're using Antares guarding heart again, aren't you? I, old Cheng, still remember the last time, before the retired emperor's birthday, you said that Yinghua was guarding the heart. What happened to the trade route that was sabotaged by Guanlong? Did Mars come up with this again when it saw that Chang and city couldn't be messed up?" Then, according to what you said, are all the stars in the sky what you call Mars guarding the heart? You, Chang Yaojin, I have no quarrel with the ox. Get out of here. Don't use Antares guarding heart to swindle people. If you dare to use this again, do you believe that Lao Tzu won't beat you up in court? Vulgar. Vulgar. Your Majesty, please say something. We are sincere. Now, everyone in Chang'an City is indeed spreading this rumor. Moreover, the locusts are also true. According to what Chang Yaojin said, the locusts outside the city were all fabricated by us. Lord Wei, come out and be the judge. Seeing that the emperor was still ignoring him, that person hurriedly asked Wei Zheng. Wei Zheng glanced indifferently at all the officials who were kneeling on the ground and begging him to come out. He sighed faintly and said, "Just now, the emperor said that this is not a punishment from heaven. This is a blessing from heaven. It is an auspicious sign that heaven has bestowed upon the Tang dynasty. Don't you understand?" When the civil officials heard this, they instantly held their breaths. An auspicious sign from heaven? What was going on? Even Prime Minister Wei. Prime Minister Wei. I don't know who the Emperor and Prime Minister Wei have listened to mislead the public, but these locusts have been the bane of heaven since ancient times. How can this be an auspicious sign? Not an auspicious sign? Chang Yaojin sneered and said, "Sun Dahai, I remember that until now, you still have a lot of locusts' eggs stored in your house. Do you dare to say that you haven't eaten a gene of them every day? You, Chang Yaojin, how can that thing compare to locusts? That is a great tonic that the emperor has bestowed upon this humble official. Moreover, the emperor has been eating it. How can something like locusts compare to it? Ha ha! Ha 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 ha!" Chang Yaojin and Zhang Sun Wuji finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Sun Dahai, old man, I don't know if you've overdone it or if your brain is really not enough. Let me ask you, what are locusts' eggs? What are locusts? These locusts' eggs are, of course." At this point, Sun Dahai's voice suddenly stopped abruptly. Even in the political announcement hall, all the civil officials who were arguing with the military generals with red faces came to an abrupt stop. What were locusts? What were locusts' eggs? This, Li Shimin also said faintly. "Are you all done arguing?" Chapter 354. Li Shimin really didn't want to pay attention to these people. But the current situation was already enough. If they continued to cause trouble, they would lose control of the situation. This was something he didn't want to see. Li Shimin calmly glanced at the crowd and leaned back on the soft marten leather throne. "We have been planning this for months. You have all seen the benefits of the locust eggs at that time, right? We have a record of your purchases and your private hoarding of the locust eggs here." Li Shimin knocked on a register on the table. This time, all the civil officials couldn't help but pale. They didn't know what the emperor wanted to do. Li Shimin waited for a while before continuing. "We feel that this thing is not bad. It's good stuff, so we share it with you all so that you can get benefits and strengthen your bodies. But we have prepared another thing today." Li Shimin calmly waved his hand. His sister-in-law looked at the crowd with disdain and shouted, "Come, serve breakfast." A moment later, 2 rows of palace maids carrying exquisite white jade plates with fist-sized jade bowls on them entered the political announcement hall unhurriedly. Everyone immediately stepped aside to make a path. Li Shimin waved his hand, and everyone sat on their prayer mats. Smelling the tempting fragrance in the air, everyone was a bit confused. On the other hand, Chang Yaojin impatiently looked at the bowls, drooling. He didn't make it for dinner last night, but he learned about the wonders of this thing from Zhang Sun and the others bragging. The palace maids first placed the first bowl in front of Li Shimin, and then placed a bowl of light yellow paste for the officials according to their official ranks. Even little Gizi was rewarded with a bowl by Li Shimin. He excitedly held the jade bowl and trembled all over. "We know that you are all wondering why we would invite you all to a banquet at this time, and it's just a bowl of paste. This bowl of paste has a great background." When everyone heard this, even the impatient Chang Yaojin hurriedly put away his greedy look and carefully listened to the emperor's next words. Li Shimin held the bowl and stirred the paste with a spoon. Then, he gently scooped up a spoonful and put it into his mouth, savoring it carefully. After a while, Li Shimin opened his eyes in enjoyment. This time, the ministers were even more confused. In the past few days, I have received the grace of the heavens to obtain this treasure. This is bone-strengthening powder. What? Bone-strengthening powder? What the hell? Everyone was astonished. However, Li Shimin stood up. Holding the bowl, he ate as he walked down the stairs and said, "This thing was developed by one of my nobles. I know that many of you have been working hard for the Tang dynasty. Many of you have inconveniences in your legs, and some of you even feel unbearable pain in your knees, waist, and legs in the middle of the night, especially those soldiers who have opened up the country for the Tang dynasty." The eyes of all the generals turned red when they heard this. His Majesty hasn't forgotten us. We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for the Tang dynasty and die 1,000 times without hesitation. The generals raised their bowls excitedly and shouted in unison. They roared. Li Shimin waved his hand indifferently, walked into the middle of the ministers, and sat cross-legged on the ground. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly followed the emperor's example and sat cross-legged on the ground. Only then did Li Shimin say, "It's been a long time since I've sat so close to you. The effect of this bone-strengthening powder is to strengthen the bones. I heard that a small bowl of this thing is equivalent to eating a caddy of meat or drinking a large bowl of mutton soup. But the price is only 1/10,000th of the mutton soup. It's not even close." Everyone looked at the yellow thing in the bowl, which was emitting a tempting fragrance, in horror. Is it really so magical? However, when they saw that the emperor had eaten half a bowl, how could they not believe it? Li Shimin saw that everyone was staring at the bowl but not eating. So he waved his hand and said, "Eat, eat a little with me." After that, the ministers thanked him in unison, held the bowl, and ate while choking. Li Shimin said while eating, "This small bowl is less than a copper coin. Do you believe it?" What? How? How is this possible? Everyone was shocked. Before they ate, they didn't feel anything. But now, although they only ate a little, how could they forget the taste? There was the taste of pepper and salt, but it couldn't hide the fresh taste. What is this? What is it? Li Shimin waved his hand, indicating that everyone should eat quickly. Li Shimin had already finished the last little bit of the bowl, and carefully put the last bit of the bowl into his mouth with a spoon. Li Shimin then put down the bowl reluctantly. If you can have 2 small bowls of this every day, as long as you persist for a year, I believe that each of you will be much stronger. Not only can this thing nourish the kidneys, it can also strengthen the body. After the court, I will reward each of you with a caddy of this thing. In less than 3 days, you will definitely feel the magic of this thing." What? Three caddies? 3 caddies per person? Everyone was stunned, but everyone hurriedly put down the bowl, kneeled on the ground and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" When Li Shimin heard this, only then did he smile. He had achieved his goal. Chapter 355. Actually, Li Shimin originally did not want to do this. But the longer he stayed with Zhang Feng, the more he could clearly feel the benefits of running a country through business. Everyone in the imperial court had a large amount of fiefdom. Everyone had their own business circle. From the amount of money that the cooperative had made last time, it could be seen that each and every one of them was filthy rich. Now, many Confucian officials in the imperial court were against him. Why was that? It was all for money. He had learned his lesson. From Zhang Feng, he understood a principle. Often, when using a soft knife to kill people, it was more terrifying than using a knife to chop off people's heads or even kill their entire family. This was the result of Li Shimin's discussion with Empress Zhangsun last night. That was to fatten these guys up first. You have to pull them onto the boat and let them have a goal. Only then would they be willing to work hard for you. Just like the method that Zhang Feng formulated to deal with Tubo. If you want to kill a wolf, you have to at least fatten it up. When it can't brandish its claws, the effect of killing it is always 100 times better than killing it when it is hungry. At that time, even a 10-year-old child can kill it with a knife. This was the business model. It was a way of running a country that Li Shimin learned from Zhang Feng. Thinking of this, Li Shimin suppressed the excitement in his heart. He waved his hand and said, "My beloved officials, I know that you all want to know what this is, right? Your Majesty, what is this thing? Why is it so cheap? Is it really effective? This old official's knees hurt all year round. I have eaten all kinds of tonics, but it still doesn't get better. This." Li Shimin smiled and patted Sun Dahai's shoulder. "My beloved official, I promise you that if you continue to take the bone-strengthening powder, in less than a year your legs will hurt. It will get better. Moreover, I have a secret that all of you must keep a secret for me." When everyone heard this, they couldn't wait to stick their ears to Li Shimin's mouth. "You can only eat 2 big bowls of this thing a day. If you eat more, I'm worried that it will harm your health." Injured? Ahem. What the emperor meant was that this thing could strengthen the yang qi. The old man tried it last night, and it was very effective. Fang Xianling coughed and said in a low voice, but his voice was soft. However, everyone was terrified when they heard it. Which one of them didn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? However, as they grew older, everyone began to feel powerless. Ever since they came into contact with the locust eggs, everyone felt as if they had found a treasure. The locust's eggs, which were originally worth a few copper coins per caddy, were all eaten up. But the effect, there was nothing to say. But now, this thing was actually an aphrodisiac? Everyone's eyes turned red. Staring at the remaining food in the bowl, everyone began to wolf it down. Some people even covered the bowl with their sleeves and licked it with their tongues. Li Shimin didn't stop them. He just looked at everyone with a smile. Cheng Yaojin was about to follow suit, but Fang Xianling quietly nudged him in the arm. Only then did he put down the bowl embarrassedly. After everyone finished eating, Li Shimin said, "This bone-strengthening powder not only has the effect of strengthening the yang qi and the kidney, but also contains all the effects of the locust eggs. If you take it for a long time, although it can't make you young again, it can make your body stronger. Not only that, it can also make you a little contribution to the population of the Tang dynasty. I am also willing to take this thing out and make a fortune with my beloved subjects." Make a fortune? The emperor was actually willing to offer such a magical and precious thing? Is this really a treasure given to us by the heavens? Everyone was even more excited and thanked him profusely. At this time, Li Shimin stood up with the help of Wei Zhang and Cheng Yaojin. After exchanging greetings with the officials again, Li Shimin said, "I know that you all want to know what this thing is, right? Your Majesty, what is it?" Li Shimin shook his head lightly. "Allow me to keep you in suspense. Go back and try it. After 3 days, when you see the effect, I will naturally announce it in the morning court. And I dare to guarantee that this thing, as long as you all work together with me, in less than 3 months, your mansions will be filled with money." The officials were envious. Previously, the emperor knew that they all had properties, but he didn't care. But now, the emperor was actually willing to take out such a sacred thing and share it with everyone. What was this? This was a wise emperor of a generation. Among them, there were some people who always felt that the emperor was not pleasing to the eye. At this time, when they looked at Li Shimin, there was actually a sense of shame in their eyes. Guanlong, the nobles of Shandong, and even the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs couldn't understand. Everyone looked at the emperor in confusion. They didn't know what Li Shimin was doing. Cheng Yaojin was also anxious. If it weren't for Wei Zhang and Fang Xianling holding him back, he would have rushed up and asked the emperor what he was doing. But at this time, he heard a sentence from Zhang Sun Wuji's speech. After the court, the emperor invites you in. Chapter 356. The meeting was dismissed. Amidst everyone's excitement, and doubt, the tide receded. But this time, Li Shimin felt different from before. Why? This was because he could actually hear even more loyalty from the crowd's chanting. It was a subtle feeling. However, Li Shimin knew that his intuition was not wrong. Wasn't that person trying to hide his assets? Was he afraid that the emperor would know? But now, not only did the emperor not blame him, but he would also share the way to make money with everyone. What was this? If he went against the emperor at this time, It would only be bad for the nobles and their families. The emperor was obviously trying to win people's hearts. This was a good opportunity. The more Li Shimin thought about it, the wider the smile on his face. He could imagine everyone's excitement on the road now. He had already grasped these people's minds. Li Shimin did not return to the imperial study. Instead, he entered the imperial garden. Looking at the withered appearance of the imperial garden, Li Shimin sighed with emotion. Sitting in the pavilion in the middle of the lake, he could even feel that the fish at this time were not as happy as before. Not long after, Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, Du Ruhui, Fang Xianling, and Cheng Yaojin came in a hurry. As soon as they came in, little Gizi motioned for everyone to be quiet. But the sound of feet stepping on dry leaves finally woke Li Shimin up. "You're here. Sit down." After everyone sat down, Li Shimin said, "Today, there are no monarchs and ministers here, only a few close friends. Little Gizi, sit down too." "I thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty." After sitting down, Li Shimin said, "Are you very confused about why I did this?" "Your Majesty, it is indeed so. In this way, won't it help the nobles of Shandong and Guanlong to become more arrogant?" Wei Zheng said with a serious expression. "No." Li Shimin shook his head. "You've also interacted with Brother Zhangfeng quite a bit. Think about it, from the moment Brother Zhangfeng came up with his first water wheel plan, which of his plans hasn't been meticulously planned out, taking into account the Tubo, Tuyuhun, and the Turks? How did he do it? Have you thought about it carefully?" The six of them looked at each other in confusion and shook their heads at the same time. Li Shimin looked at the surface of the lake and said, "I once wanted to kill all those rotten people in the court, but last night, we suddenly had an epiphany from Brother Zhangfeng's way of doing things and his experience in handling matters. Killing people is just a small matter. Exterminating families is killing, but once you start killing, there will definitely be more voices of opposition in the court. You might even lose everything. But what if it's a soft knife? Have you ever thought about the logic of killing pigs and hunting?" The six of them lowered their heads in confusion and began to carefully appraise it. Li Shimin said again, "In fact, don't think of yourselves as you are now. Think of yourselves as you were when you were with Brother Zhangfeng. You are a businessman, and we are businessmen. Take a look at this matter again. Do you want to kill all the merchants who oppose you? Or do you want to use Brother Zhangfeng's means to turn them into your tools to make money? For example, Tubo? Buzz." The six of them couldn't help but feel like a clap of thunder in their minds. At this time, all the puzzles they couldn't figure out turned into clouds and mist. It turned out that the emperor had already calculated everything. This plan, once it was implemented, it would be very difficult. Then the emperor would really treat these people as prey. "But, Your Majesty, what about Guanlong?" Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "You don't have to worry about this. You just need to remember that when a pack of wolves fight for food, there will inevitably be a fight. We just need to do our job as hunters and wait and see. Don't care about anything else. I think the Shandong aristocrats are no threat. As long as they take the bone-strengthening powder back, they will naturally surrender to me. Now, only Guanlong and the people with 5 surnames and 7 hopes are left. Don't you want to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight?" Everyone was scared. When did the emperor come up with such a ruthless plan? Could it be this was the masterpiece of Brother Zhangfeng? What do you think of my plan? Li Shimin stood up with his hands behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the breeze. He looked like an immortal. The 6 of them could sit here and be valued by Li Shimin. How could they be fools? At this time, the 6 of them knelt down and shouted excitedly, "Your Majesty is wise!" On the other side, that is, the Wanshou Palace in the depths of the Imperial Palace. This is the palace that Li Shimin renovated for Li Yuan after the conflict between him and Li Yuan. At this time, Li Yuan was lying on the swing in confusion, looking at the sky as if he was looking for something. But at this time, an old eunuch hurriedly reported. Reporting to retired emperor, Lord Go of the Imperial Astronomer requests an audience? Lord Go? No! Hearing this, Li Yuan waved his hand and asked, "Oh right. Have you seen the locusts?" I was still thinking that I could play with locusts with everyone today. How come the locusts are all gone today? Reporting to retired emperor, last night, the emperor ordered the palace maids and the people of the Minister of Internal Affairs to control the locusts. What? The locusts were really controlled? But at this time, a discordant voice interrupted Li Yuan. This humble subject, Go Baoming of the Imperial Astronomer, requests an audience with retired emperor. Chapter 357. Li Yuan was originally very shocked. This locust plague seemed to be more ferocious than before. He was still worried about how Li Shimin was going to control the locust plague. But this morning it was controlled? This couldn't help but make Li Yuan even more puzzled. But he was also slightly relieved. He knew best what his son was like. If he could govern the imperial city well, then this method would definitely be used by the whole world. Otherwise, he wouldn't be Li Shimin. However, what the hell was this Go Baoming? Li Yuan glanced slightly at the person kneeling on the ground and said, You came to the wrong place. If there's anything, go to the emperor. I don't care. Retired emperor, I beg retired emperor to make a decision. Now, confusion is guarding the heart. The emperor's mind has been blinded by the demon. He actually wants to share a magical thing with the officials. In other words, the emperor wants to do the business of the merchants. What? What magical thing? Li Yuan instantly became interested. He sat up and asked. Answering retired emperor, it's called Retired Emperor. The bone-strengthening powder is here. Have a taste. And at this moment, a charming voice that could make people's bones soften instantly made Li Yuan put him down and excitedly held a woman in revealing clothes. Good, good, good. Beauty? Come. Come. Let me taste what's different about the bone-strengthening powder you made. Retired Emperor. You must not eat it. This thing hasn't been appraised by the Imperial Academy of Medicine, and it hasn't been. Get lost. The Emperor and I have eaten the thing sent by my son. And from last night until now we have been eating it. It's all right. And presumably you all have eaten this thing in the imperial court today, right? What do you mean? Why are you disturbing my mood here? Retired Emperor. Seeing Li Yuan angry, Go Baoming hurriedly kowtowed like pounding garlic. Retired Emperor, we don't know the raw material of this thing until now. And I heard that the Emperor said that the cost of this thing is only 1 copper coin. This humble official has never seen such an item. And now, the Emperor actually wants to reward this thing to the officials and let them get rich together. This is against. Get lost. Men, beat him up and throw him out. Li Yuan was angry, but in fact, his heart was slowly becoming heavy. Seeing this, Go Baoming quickly begged for mercy. Retired Emperor, His Majesty's move not only benefited the 5 clans and 7 nobles, but also benefited the Guanlong group. If Guanlong takes advantage of this opportunity to expand, then our Tang dynasty will be in danger. Li Yuan frowned slightly. Men, beat him to death. Yes. When the golden-armored guard heard this, he pulled out the Mo sword from his waist and smashed the scabbard heavily on Go Baoming's body. In an instant, countless golden-armored guards did the same and smashed down viciously. And Li Yuan looked at the things in the bowl at this time and also lost his appetite. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. Eunuch Rong, what do you think His Majesty is doing? After dismissing all the beauties, palace maids, eunuchs, and even the golden-armored guards, Li Yuan asked an old eunuch beside him in a solemn voice. The old eunuch glanced at the dead body and said, Retired Emperor, you watched His Majesty grow up. To say something rebellious, this servant also watched His Majesty grow up. With His Majesty's temperament, presumably, he will not do things that he is not sure of. But this servant can't see through it. I can't see through it either. Although Li Yuan said that he did not care about the court anymore, but he was basically paying attention to all the big and small things in the court. Especially last night when Li Shimin offered this bone-strengthening powder, he had already told him the ingredients, which were locusts. Moreover, he tasted the fried salt and pepper locusts with him. That delicious taste. Every time he thought of it, it made Li Yuan salivate. However, he could also imagine the value of such an item. He actually wanted to share such a miraculous item with these people? Not to mention others, this Go Baoming, who were these people? If word of this got out, wouldn't he become the talk of the town? Li Yuan also could not figure it out. He could not see through what Li Shimin was doing. He did not even know what he was planning. Now that the envoys of Tubo and Tuyuhun had arrived, then all of this happened under the enemy's nose. Presumably, it would not be long before this matter would spread to those people's ears. This, not only did it not have a trace of benefit to the Tang dynasty, but it would also put the Tang dynasty in a difficult situation. What was he thinking? Li Yuan looked at the tempting fragrance in the bowl. At this time, he actually felt that it was not fragrant. Deeply sighing, Li Yuan still felt that he should go and see Li Shimin. Otherwise, he would not have confidence in his heart. Go, set the carriage, let's go see His Majesty. Alright, where is His Majesty now? Reporting to retired Emperor, I heard that he is discussing with Prime Minister Wei and others in the pavilion in the middle of the lake in the Imperial Garden. Good. Since they are all here, then today I might as well solve this matter all at once. Go! Set the carriage. Yes. Li Yuan made up his mind. Since they were all here, then he might as well make this matter clear in front of them. He believed that if it were not for these guys, His Majesty would definitely not play like this. Or was there really an expert behind Li Shimin? But who was he? Li Yuan could not help but think of the jars of wine that he had never seen before. Who are you? Chapter 358. In the Imperial Garden. Li Shimin and Wei Zhang were talking about how to deal with the plague of locusts. While they were talking, they picked up some oily grasshoppers from a big plate on the stone table, threw them into their mouths, and chewed them. Then they took a sip of wine. That kind of wonderful feeling was self-evident. My dear minister, do you mean that the plague in Tubo is more serious this time? Li Shimin took a sip of wine. His face was as red as a tomato, but after a long silence, he looked at Wei Zhang and asked. Wei Zhang thought for a while, put down the grasshopper that he was about to eat, and nodded. Here's the thing. The news from Liangzhou arrived at your mansion in the middle of the night. It said that all the good merchants in Liangzhou came back from Tubo as if they were fleeing. And I also heard that there was a problem at the Turkic border. All the Turkic people are gathering at the border. Judging from their ragged clothes, they don't seem to be having a good time. So, this means that Brother Zhang Feng's prediction is very accurate. The plague of locusts in the Tang dynasty is caused by Tubo and Tuyuhun? Li Shimin analyzed carefully. Yes. Fang Xianling nodded. He narrowed his eyes and said, That's indeed the case. I also checked the letters from various places. All the places where the plague of locusts broke out are near these places. The other places are basically fine. Then, tomorrow morning, the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun will have an audience with you. Your Majesty, I want to ask if this matter will be discussed in the court, or if I will go to the Honglu Temple in private to hold a banquet and talk about it at the banquet. Zhang Sun Wuji frowned and looked at Li Shimin. Well, Li Shimin stroked the beard on his chin. After thinking for a while, he said, Let's wait until after the court tomorrow. I think those officials will use the bone-strengthening powder today, so there will be a decision tomorrow. Isn't it supposed to take 3 days? Chang Yaojin grabbed a handful of locusts and stuffed them into his mouth, then asked vaguely, If that's the case, Your Majesty, why don't we make them suffer for another day? This way, it will be more beneficial to our interests. Moreover, when the time comes, those fellows in the imperial court will definitely finish the things you gave them in 3 days. When that time comes, they will crazily want more of these things. Wei Zhang narrowed his eyes, and a scheming look flashed in his eyes. Aphrodisiac is a fatal attraction for every old thing. Your Majesty, don't ask anything about it for 2 days. Don't talk about it. By the morning of the day after tomorrow, those ministers will definitely not be able to endure it. They will agree to whatever Your Majesty says in terms of benefits. When the time comes, once it is announced, there will be no delay in Your Majesty's plan. As long as someone dares to oppose or question it, there will be people who will go crazy against that person. How could these old fellows not know about the Emperor's plan? This was a big reshuffle and also a chance to pick a side. In front of huge benefits, all the previous gaps would disappear. They were all old foxes, so who would dare to block the road to wealth? Moreover, it was the road to wealth for all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. However, the money they earned would eventually go into the emperor's pocket, and then turn into pieces of paper and fly back into their pockets. It was not so much making money for them, but for the emperor. Damn it, who would oppose it? Who would dare to oppose it? Good. Li Shimin heard it and said loudly. Then, he raised his wine cup and said, "In that case, let's make them suffer for 2 more days. Just like the man who trained the eagle, I will also make them suffer. Everyone, raise your cups. Let's drink together." Now, all the plans, including the strategy that Zhang Feng told Li Shimin before and yesterday, were clear about the plague of locusts in Tubo and other countries. Then, they just had to wait for 3 days. After 3 days, what kind of era would the Tang dynasty enter? However, just as they raised their cups, Li Yuan and the old eunuch came in a hurry. They stopped all the people who wanted to report and stood not far from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Then they looked at Li Shimin and the others. Li Yuan also heard the conversation just now. Although he did not hear what they were discussing in a low voice, the last sentence made Li Yuan unable to hold back his anger. If this went on, wouldn't the court become a place of good merchants? These traitorous traitors. Li Yuan was angry. The evil spirit all over his body was rising sharply. At this moment, Li Yuan no longer hid behind the tree and strode towards the pavilion in the middle of the lake. At this moment, the old eunuch who followed him also shouted in a sharp voice, "The retired emperor has arrived." When the people who were drinking heard it, they could not help but be shocked. Why did the retired emperor come? But when they turned around, they saw the retired emperor angrily coming with his hands behind his back. The people's eyebrows could not help but jump, and they hurriedly bowed down. Li Shimin was the same. The son greets the retired emperor. Li Yuan did not speak. Instead, he walked into the pavilion in the middle of the lake in anger. Sitting on the stone bench that Li Shimin just sat on, he coldly looked at the people and said indifferently, "Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Cheng Yaojin, do you know your crimes?" Chapter 359. Guilty? What crime? The few of them were confused. Li Shimin was even more confused. But after thinking for a bit, he understood a lot of things. This must be someone who went to complain. Very good. Father. This son doesn't know why father is so angry? Is it? Zhen is living very well. Don't use those things to brush me off. Zhen asks you, this locust plague, how are you going to solve it? Also, I heard that you want to turn the imperial court into a place for merchants, is that right? Don't quibble. Zhen heard your conversation just now. What are you talking about? If you go on like this, won't this imperial court be laughed at? My imperial court of the Tang dynasty has become a place for merchants. What is this? This is a great shame. It turned out that the retired emperor was angry because of this matter. Li Shimin calmed his mind slightly and motioned for the few of them to get up. Then, he sat opposite Li Shimin and said, "Father, this matter is not what you think. Listen to me for the specifics." While talking, Li Shimin leaned close to Li Yuan's ear and started whispering. Following Li Shimin's whisper, Li Yuan's expression sometimes frowned and pondered. Sometimes it suddenly became clear. Sometimes it was unusually angry. After a while, Li Yuan finally figured out the cause and effect of the matter. He glanced at the few of them and waved his hand faintly. "You all withdraw first. Zhen has something to say to the emperor." This official obeys the decree. The few of them hurried away. But everyone could see from the emperor and the retired emperor's eyes that it was not appropriate for the retired emperor to pursue this matter. The few of them also relaxed and hurried to carry out the matter that they discussed with the emperor before. But at this time, only Li Yuan and Li Shimin were left in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. The atmosphere was somewhat subtle. Li Yuan looked at the locust on the stone table with interest and said, "You all are in a good mood. Can this kind of thing be eaten?" "Father, why don't you try it? Although this thing doesn't look good, the taste is still not bad. It's a good thing to go with wine. Is it the kind of wine that you gave Jin?" Li Yuan smelled the lingering smell of alcohol in the air and asked. Li Shimin didn't say anything. Instead, he waved his hand and had someone bring in another set of bowls, chopsticks, wine set, and locusts. He personally poured a cup for Li Yuan. Only then did Li Yuan leisurely use his hand to pick up a locust. First, he removed all of the locust's legs and tentacles. Then he pulled out its wings and stomach. But after looking at it, he picked up a few more locusts and retreated, throwing them into his mouth and slowly chewing. As he chewed, Li Shimin glanced at the locusts doubtfully, then picked up a complete one. Only after Li Shimin personally took a bite did he put it into his mouth. In an instant, the crispness after frying, as well as the freshness and chewiness, made Li Yuan fall in love with this thing. Anyway, he had already eaten the bone-strengthening powder made from locusts, let alone a whole locusts. As for the locust egg, he had been consuming it all this time. Its effects were indeed quite good. While eating and drinking, Li Yuan raised his cup and clinked it with Li Shimin's. Have you thought it through? Do you want to start a war with Guanlong now? Yes. This son has thought it through. Sometimes, raising the butcher's knife high up can't truly kill the enemy. Instead, it will cause one's losses to be even greater. Therefore, this son feels that Guanlong controls the trade route, right? Then this emperor will compete with him in the trade route and knock him down in the area he is best at. This way, not only will everyone know that this is our Li family's world, and it will also let everyone understand that in this world, there is only one person who has the final say. This son cooperates with those people in the imperial court. This is also a matter of last resort. It is the same as this. That cooperative is the prerequisite for this matter. Putting all the silver into our own pockets, they, in turn, are fighting for the world for our Lao Li family. This kind of matter, everyone will sharpen their heads to drill in. Who dares to retreat? Then, this emperor doesn't need to make a move. There will definitely be someone who will kill them. Li Shimin narrated his plan in detail to Li Yuan. He even narrated the matter of how to deal with the locusts and the bone-strengthening powder to Tubo and the others. Only then did Li Yuan let out a deep sigh. Although this has never happened before in the current Tang dynasty, everything is recovering. This is indeed needed. Moreover, the plague of locusts has appeared at such a crucial time. If this disaster can really be turned into an opportunity, then this world will really be peaceful. Father is wise. Li Shimin flattered in a timely manner. However, Li Yuan sighed slightly and said, Wise my ass. This is all your credit. This emperor will not ask about the matters of the imperial court. Today, Go Baoming went to find me and I killed him. The imperial astronomer has to change to a more reliable person. Alright, you have to pay attention to the imperial college. During this period of time, my palace eunuchs often meet those people. They seem to be in contact with this person with the surname Go. You have to be careful. Thank you for the reminder, Father. This son has noticed the imperial college. They are the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs. For the time being, this son is not prepared to have a conflict with them. Now that this matter of the bone-strengthening powder has appeared, this son wants to let Guanlong and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs have a dogfight. What do you think? Li Yuan savored it carefully and then said, Eunuch Rong, come, help this emperor back to the palace. While speaking, Li Yuan said faintly, This emperor will no longer ask about this matter. However, when will you get a chef for these locusts? This son obeys your majesty. Chapter 360. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. However, these 3 days were torture for the envoys of Tubo and Tuyuhun, as well as all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. Basically, the gates of Zhangsun Wuji, Cheng Yaojin, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui were all trampled on. Not for anything else, but just to ask what exactly this bone-strengthening powder was. As for why no one went to Wei Zheng's residence, only someone with a screw loose would dare to go to Wei Zheng's residence and ask about the bone-strengthening powder? Were you courting death? Who was Wei Zheng? Once he knew that you were inquiring about something that even the emperor was unwilling to talk about, he would definitely send a memorial to the emperor and make you eat fried meat with a stick. These few days, Chang Yaojin and the others no longer looked pale. Instead, Their faces were glowing. They ate less meat, and their appetite had also decreased. Usually, a residence would need at least 10 caddies of noodles. But now, after everyone in the residence had eaten the bone-strengthening powder, they only needed 5 caddies of noodles. Even Chang Yaojin, who was known as a big rice bucket, had reduced his appetite from a bowl the size of a washbasin to a bowl the size of a fist. He couldn't even finish a bowl. This shocked the guests. Everyone thought that Chang Yaojin must have gotten more bone-strengthening powder than everyone else. Chang Yaojin was also at his wits' end. He sent Chang Chumo to see the emperor. After getting permission, Chang Yaojin waved his hand. You want the bone-strengthening powder, right? Okay. 100 strings of coins per caddy. But even so, he couldn't stand it anymore. Looking at the copper coins, silver, and gold ingots piled up in a room, he went crazy. He hurriedly entered the palace that night. But he didn't know until he entered the palace. Now that he entered the palace, he realized that things were serious. Other than Wei Zheng, all of their manors had encountered the same situation. Even if the entire family had been mobilized, even the locusts that had been secretly transported from the imperial city had not been enough. Those ministers were more black-hearted than the other. F***ck. There were many who asked for hundreds or even hundreds of thousands of dawn. Moreover, they would give you the money first. Regardless of whether you have it or not, they would give you the money first. Now, you have to give it to them even if you don't want to. Looking at the room full of money and the huge amount of orders, they didn't feel happy at all. Instead, they felt even more worried. How could this be good? Even though Chang Chumo, Wei Shuyu, and the others had been secretly collecting locusts these past few days, it was of no use. Hundreds of officials, almost all of them were here. How could he deal with this? He looked at the people on the Vermilion Bird Bridge. The few of them looked at each other. From the time when they were showing off at the start to now, all of them looked exhausted. Old Chang, you also encountered such a thing? Do you intend to plan my ass? This matter is too big. I have to personally report it to the higher-ups. These bastards usually complain that they are poor, but this time, the money that has been deposited into the treasury is probably not even a fraction of what they have. Then, Lord Zhangsun, what do you think we should do? The three of them couldn't help but look at Zhangsun Wuji, who had been silent all this time. Zhangsun Wuji couldn't do anything. He pouted at the depths of the imperial palace. Let's go. Only His Majesty can make a decision on this matter. The few of them didn't report their arrival in advance, but the emperor seemed to know that they were coming and gave the order in advance. Therefore, they entered the imperial palace without any hindrance. As soon as they entered the imperial study, they saw the emperor bending over the table and reading a few memorials. Greetings, Your Majesty. Get up. Li Shimin put down the things in his hands and asked, I've seen the list of people you've compiled in these 3 days. It's really beyond my expectations. What do you think if in the morning court tomorrow this thing is made by locusts, how will they react? After Li Shimin finished asking, his expression was strange. I think it's better to prepare a basin for them in advance and then give this delicious food to them first. If Your Majesty announces it at that time, I think it'll be even more perfect. Chang Yaojin's voice fell. Everyone looked at him with a strange expression. But this was enough, because this was the best way to make people remember it. Moreover, the benefits of this locusts would be remembered by them. Good. Li Shimin got up and slapped the memorials presented by the few of them. He said, What do you think about this matter? Your Majesty, Old Chang is right. I also agree with General Cheng's opinion. Last time, each of them made a lot of money from the locust's eggs, and this time they even asked us to inquire about Your Majesty. It's time to make them suffer. Zhangsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui agreed with Chang Yaojin without even thinking about it. There was nothing else. It was time to make this group of pedantic people suffer a little. Only by suffering this could they be more clear about the value and significance of this thing. Then, would the rumors in Chang'an and all the rumors in the Tang dynasty still be a problem? When the time came, there would be no need for the emperor to say anything. Naturally, someone would handle this matter perfectly. Then, in that case, I'll allow it. We'll wait for tomorrow's morning court. We congratulate your majesty. Chapter 361. Dong! 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 The morning bell at 5 o'clock sounded melodiously. But this time, when the morning bell sounded for the first time, all the officials waiting on the Vermilion Bird Bridge rushed out as if they couldn't wait any longer. They no longer yearned for the usual, neither dead nor alive. Even Wei Zhang and the others, who had been walking in front of the crowd, fell behind the crowd. This scene involuntarily left Wei Zhang dumbstruck. Lord Feng, what is the meaning of this? Wei Zhang looked doubtfully at Feng Xianling, who squinted his eyes and smiled while stroking his beard. Feng Xianling looked very energetic at this time. Even the booklets on his face were gone. His face was as rosy as a baby. Ha ha ha! Prime Minister Wei, allow me to keep you guessing. You will know later. By the way, Prime Minister Wei, remember to stand far away later. Ha ha ha! Several people who knew the inside story laughed and patted Wei Zhang's shoulder one after another. Then they walked forward slowly at a leisurely pace. Wei Zhang was even more confused. But who was he? In a flash, he figured out what was going on. He shook his head with a slight smile and no longer paid attention to the people who were scrambling to be left behind. He walked forward slowly. In the political announcement hall, the noise at this time could not be suppressed. It was like a vegetable market. All the officials and their close friends were in a circle, counting with their fingers. There were even faint quarrels and hearty laughter. But Wei Zhang was too lazy to care about all this. Zhang Sun Wuji, who was in charge of the criminal law, just smiled and looked at the people who were quarreling more and more. If it was in the past, they would have been dragged out and beaten with a board. But this time, they didn't care. Even His Majesty was late today. It wasn't until the noise turned into loud roars that little Gizi, with a dark face, took a copper gong and fiercely struck it in front of the dragon throne. Bang, bang, bang. Silence! Little Gizi didn't know how many times he shouted at the top of his voice before the crowd slowly quieted down. This is the political announcement hall. What crime do you all deserve for quarreling like this? Little Gizi also exploded. After fiercely scolding the crowd, he then said fiercely, "The Emperor is angry. After the court, each of you shall go to the Ministry of Justice to receive your 10 feet. If anyone doesn't go, Zhang Sun Wuji, you have full authority to directly go to this person's residence and serve him. As you command." Zhang Sun Wuji replied with a smile. At this moment, everyone looked at little Gizi with pale faces. Boom! Little Gizi threw the copper gong away and shouted angrily, "What are you all standing there for? His Majesty is here. Kneel and welcome him." This time, he didn't greet him respectfully. Instead, he knelt. Obviously, everyone's heart couldn't help but jump. Was the Emperor really angry? Only then did everyone kneel down in fear and shout, "Your subjects respectfully welcome your Majesty for 10,000 years. Only then did Li Shimin slowly walk out of the back hall with his hands clasped behind his back. However, as soon as he came out, Li Shimin acted as if he didn't know. He looked at the crowd in surprise and said, "Dear subjects, what are you doing? Quickly get up." "Thank you, your Majesty." Little Gizi, cancel the flogging. "You two, why did you make such a big fuss over such a small matter?" Li Shimin stepped on the stairway to heaven and sat on the dragon throne. He said again, "By the way, why were you all so noisy just now? Tell me and let me be happy. Prime Minister Wei, tell me." "Your Majesty." Wei Zhang stepped forward and held the white jade medallion. He said, "Just now, the officials were discussing the bone-strengthening powder business." "What?" Li Shimin frowned slightly. "This is the political announcement hall. Why are they discussing this matter in the morning court? What is the meaning of this? And with all the officials together? What kind of scandal is this? If people know about this, won't they sneer at the Tang dynasty and laugh at me for not being able to govern the country?" Minister of Rights. Li Shimin looked slightly displeased and waved his hand. In an instant, an old official stepped forward, trembling with fear. "Yes, your Majesty." Wait, cooperate with Lord Zhongsun and record the list of those who participated in the commotion just now. Everyone go back and copy the official system. I want to look at them one by one. The flogging will be waived. Hearing this, everyone breathed a deep sigh of relief. Some even quietly wiped the cold sweat on their foreheads. They knelt down again and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Okay. Li Shimon's mood was called elated. This was the style of a ruler of a country. In fact, he had arrived earlier, but he didn't come out. He was waiting. Just now, he bet that Wei Zhang and the others wouldn't stop him. Then, he asked little Gizi to put on a show. That was how he severely suppressed these arrogant guys. He claimed to be the successor of Confucius and Mencius. He cared about it all day long. But what was he doing now? At this time, the civil officials also felt guilty. No one dared to ask about the bone-strengthening powder. No one even mentioned the bad news caused by the locust plague. After dealing with some things as usual, the court meeting was basically over. Li Shimon waved his hand and said, "I see that you all look very ruddy. Good. This is the appearance that a subject of my great Tang should have. Just like before, each and every one of you had an emaciated complexion. Those who didn't know would have thought that we treated you unfairly. Tell me, why is that? Why do you all look so ruddy? Did you get some treasure?" The officials heard this. They couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. "Isn't this the bone-strengthening powder given by Your Majesty?" But now everyone was smart and didn't dare to speak out. But this silence didn't last long. It was unknown which unlucky bastard was kicked in the butt, causing him to lie on the ground. The white jade tablet in his hand fell to the ground with a click. Li Shimon looked at it and was happy. Surveillance of the Imperial College. Master Cui, tell me about it. Chapter 362. Cui Fengjun was miserable. He quietly turned around to take a look, but he didn't see who kicked him. But now the emperor had spoken. He could only roar fiercely in his heart. Damn it! If Lao Tzu finds out who kicked Lao Tzu will kill you. But thinking about it was just thinking. Now was not the time to complain. He hurriedly said, "In reply to Your Majesty, this is the effect of the bone-strengthening powder that Your Majesty bestowed to us. When we went to visit General Chang yesterday, we discovered that General Chang was also using this item. Previously, everyone knew that General Chang's appetite was 10 times that of us. But yesterday, we discovered that General Chang had actually abandoned the basin and switched to a fist-sized bowl. It's the same for us officials. Previously, we were wondering if there was something wrong with our bodies. However, after seeing General Chang and visiting some other officials here, we realized that all the officials who ate the bone-strengthening powder bestowed by His Majesty were the same. And we feel that although our appetite is smaller, we have more strength than before. In the past, we couldn't even lift a bucket of water. But now, we can lift it with one hand effortlessly. We are already 53 years old this year." "Oh!" Li Shimon was amused. "You are also the same? We thank Your Majesty for your kindness." No one dared to say anything else and hurriedly bowed. Although Chang Yaojin's expression was a little strange, he still straightened his back and said, "This is indeed the effect of Your Majesty's bone-strengthening powder. In my early years, this old official had been on the battlefield all year round. When I was old, my waist and legs would hurt badly at night, whether it was sunny or rainy. But ever since I ate the bone-strengthening powder, my waist and legs have been better. Moreover, when I sleep at night, it's like I'm 10 years younger." Ha ha ha. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Li Shimon also laughed when he heard that. Good. It seems that all of you used the bone-strengthening powder well. Does anyone feel anything strange? Li Shimon took the opportunity to ask. However, no one objected. Li Shimon nodded. He waved his hand and said, "In that case, I will tell you about the bone-strengthening powder today. I hope you can work with me to better govern the Tang dynasty." "As you command. Everyone, please follow me for breakfast. We'll talk about the rest later." While speaking, Li Shimon and little Gizi looked at each other. After receiving a definite reply, Li Shimon strode out of the political announcement hall. All the ministers were impatient as they followed Li Shimin out of the political announcement hall. At an unknown time, the huge square between the political announcement hall and the Hanyuan Hall had long been filled with densely packed tables and chairs. These tables were all covered with red silk cloth. On top of the red cloth, there was only a plate covered with red cloth. There was also a wine cup, a pair of chopsticks, and a bowl of steaming bone-strengthening powder. That was all. However, the strange thing was that there was a brown jar next to each table. There were also palace maids waiting on the jars. Everyone looked at the bone-strengthening powder as if they were looking at the elixir of immortality. How could they notice such details? Not to mention other things, these days they finally let those resentful women at home experience the power. How could this not make them crazy? Come, come, come. Everyone, take your seats. Thank you, Your Majesty. After everyone bowed to Li Shimin again, they took their seats according to the order of the official rank. At this time, in front of Li Shimin, a eunuch hurriedly placed the same things as everyone else, but the brown jar was missing. Li Shimin took his seat. Only then did everyone sit down. Come, come, come. Everyone, you must be wondering what's under the red cloth, right? Smell it. What do you think of this fragrance? Zhen will tell you now. This is the raw material used to make this bone-strengthening powder. It has the same effect as the locust eggs. Zhen and retired emperor have been eating it during this period of time. It's a rare product that goes well with wine. Come. Follow Zhen to lift the red cloth. The effect was achieved. The officials had been waiting impatiently for a long time. That enticing fragrance, as well as the rich smell of pepper and oil mixed together, had already made everyone salivate. However, after lifting the red cloth, everyone was dumbfounded. Wasn't this the locust? This was the raw material used to make the bone-strengthening powder? Finally, everyone understood. Everyone resisted the urge to retch. Their faces were pale as they looked at the bowl of bone-strengthening powder emitting an enticing fragrance. This was the bone-strengthening powder? Everyone only felt that the sky and earth were spinning. Waves of nausea overturned in their stomach. Everyone couldn't help but quietly look over. On the table, the emperor was eating with relish. Wei Zhang and the others were also sitting on the bench eating and drinking. Even that Cheng Yaojin seemed like he hadn't eaten before. He stuffed big handfuls into his mouth and kept urging the palace maid to give him another bowl. Was it really that delicious? But now the emperor had eaten it. How could they not eat it? Everyone resisted the churning in their hearts. They picked up a locust leg and stuffed it into their mouths. They closed their eyes and swallowed it. And at this moment, Li Shimin glanced at everyone and raised his cup. Come, come, come. Everyone, drink this cup of wine. Chapter 363. What could they say? The emperor had already raised his cup. They could only hurriedly get up and drink with the emperor. But in the next moment, their expressions changed. Looking at the little wine left in the cup and then at the jade pot, they couldn't help but show a look of horror. They drank some of this wine every day, and those who could hold their liquor would usually drink a large jar every day. But this wine, it was just a small cup, but it was like swallowing a ball of fire. The scorching temperature went down the throat and then into the stomach. This wine. My God, what wine is this? Is this wine a tribute from Zhenla? Isn't it too strong? But this wine is so addictive. Ha ha ha. When Li Shimin heard the cries of alarm among the ministers below, he laughed aloud and said, Gentlemen, what do you think? What do you think of this wine? Of course, this wine was Zhang Feng's, but Li Shimin had learned to be shrewd. And anyone who had been to the tavern a few times would be shrewd enough to know that this wine had the so-called degree. And these wines were ordered by Li Shimin to the tavern last night by Wei Shuyu. 10 jars of low-degree wine and 10 jars of 72-degree wine. Of course, Li Shimin, Wei Zhang, and the others drank the lowest-degree wine, but the rest of the people, that would definitely be a 72-proof wine. This was Li Shimin's trap. Li Shimin didn't dare to ask Zhang Feng for the wine. Even if he asked, Zhang Feng wouldn't give it to him. When Li Shimin's voice fell, those old drunkards couldn't sit still. Your Majesty, Is this wine a tribute from Zhenla? Impossible, your majesty. I think this wine is sweet and spicy. Although it feels like a knife or fire when it goes down the throat, it retains the essence of the grain. Is this wine brewed from wheat? But wheat doesn't exist in the western regions. This is... Stop guessing. Li Shimin waved his hand. He glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji indifferently. Immediately, Zhang Sun Wuji stood up and said, "This wine was brewed by an expert from the Great Tang. However, due to the geography and environment of the mountain that the expert resided in, there is not much of this wine, only 10 jars a year. Today, the emperor has reluctantly taken out these 10 jars of wine as a reward for all of you to drink to your heart's content. What are all of you waiting for? Why aren't you thanking him? What? This wine is brewed by an expert. Moreover, there were only 10 jars? In other words, His Majesty wanted to use this fine wine as well." Everyone's eyes couldn't help but burst into bursts of scorching light. Let's not talk about the taste of the locusts. If the emperor could eat them, then the taste would definitely not be that bad. Moreover, he had already eaten the locust's eggs. What was there to be afraid of? However, if everyone didn't think too much and hurriedly knelt on the ground to express their gratitude. Then, they hurriedly got up and re-examined the yellow locusts on the plate. Then, some people imitated Wei Zhang and the others. They carefully picked up a piece and threw it into their mouths with their eyes closed. However, just like all the people who were eating this for the first time, everyone's expressions changed when they saw the latecomers eat it. As long as they ate the first bite, basically no one could resist the charm of this thing. One bite of the locusts, one sip of the wine. This taste, even if they were asked to resign now, they would be served with these things every day. They wouldn't exchange it even if they were given immortals. The key was that, after eating this thing for 3 days, they obviously felt refreshed. Although their appetite had decreased, everyone was more energetic. Their waists were no longer sore and their legs were no longer painful. Even their bodies and bones were more powerful. What was this? This was something that couldn't be exchanged with any amount of money. But now, His Majesty actually bestowed such a miraculous elixir to me? Was the plague of locusts really not a punishment from heaven, but a sweet dew from heaven? Everyone was confused. Even more people were excited. How many good things had that bastard wasted in the past few hundred years? If such a sacred thing could be developed in their hands, it would definitely be immortalized for generations to come. The more they thought about it, the more excited they became. In the end, those Confucian officials didn't even have the elegance of the past. Everyone seemed to have gone crazy. They grabbed a handful of locusts and stuffed them into their mouths. Then, they grabbed the wine pot with the other hand and poured it into their mouths. It was such a crazy scene. Even the palace maids were dumbfounded. Were they bewitched? Were all the officials bewitched? Li Shimin smiled. Seeing this crazy scene, Wei Zhang and the others couldn't help but laugh. This was the effect he wanted. Once this effect was shown, all the rumors in Chang'an City and even in the Tang dynasty would be no problem. And now, Li Shimin didn't need to say anything. With the current situation, what else did he need to say? Everyone here was a wily old fox. They were very clear when it came to calculating. They had all tasted the benefits of the bone-strengthening powder. Once they accepted the locusts, everything would be settled. After all, compared to him, these officials were shrewder when it came to doing business. Thinking of this, Li Shimin stood up, raised his wine cup, and said, "Everyone, come on, let's drink to the prosperity of the Tang dynasty." How could they dare to be rash? They hurriedly raised their wine cups respectfully and shouted excitedly, "May the prosperity of the Tang dynasty last forever." Chapter 364. Compared to Li Shimin's joy, now Zhang Feng could be said to be crazy. In the yard. At this time, the yard was full of shiny black iron parts. If there was a modern person, after seeing these things, he would be shocked. Because each of these parts was a part of a bicycle. And Zhang Feng was squatting on the ground, fiddling with something like a bicycle chain. The chain was not as precise as it was in his previous life. The craftsmen of today did not have the ability to do so, but Zhang Feng had put in a lot of effort to make the gears of the tricycle into a linkage, and the link between the two gears was replaced by a chain like a chain. For this kind of thing, he quarreled with the old blacksmith in the south of Chong and city for a full hour before finally settling this matter. At this time, Zhang Feng was using molten iron to fasten the chain to the gaps one by one. He heated it with fire and then poured molten iron on it. In this way, this thing could be made into a hole. After it solidified, he heated it up and fixed it in one direction with a hammer. In this way, the whole chain was formed. Fangzi, are you in? Fangzi? Just as Zhang Feng was preparing to assemble the tricycle in a hurry, the old scholar's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Zhang Feng had to quickly wet everything and cover him with the prepared linen cloth. Then he hurried to the front hall and opened the door of the tavern. He saw the old scholar wrapped in a headscarf, only a pair of eyes on his head. Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he saw this outfit. I say, old Shotsai, did you become a thief? Get out! The old scholar glared at Zhang Feng angrily. After entering the room, he took off all the clothes on his body and looked at Zhang Feng's tavern with curiosity. He asked, "Why didn't I see a fly when I entered the tavern, let alone a locust? What did you use?" "Here, that, made with mugwort and realgar beef tendons." Zhang Feng pointed at the corner of the wall. The old scholar couldn't help but feel curious. "This thing can drive away locusts?" "Of course. If you don't believe me, you'll know when the time comes. Take some with you when you leave. I guarantee that you won't see a single locust in your courtyard." "Oh right, you're here for—" Zhang Feng asked curiously. "It's nothing. I just don't have any alcohol to drink." The old elementary scholar didn't put on any pretense and said directly. Hearing this, Zhang Feng didn't waste any time. He took out a jar of good wine from the counter and went to the kitchen to prepare a bowl of bone-strengthening powder and a side dish. He originally wanted to serve the fried locusts, but after thinking about it, he was afraid that the old scholar would immediately die when he saw that thing, so he hesitated for a few seconds. In the end, he gave up on acting cool. If he died, he would be in big trouble. Moreover, when the academy opened, he, the old elementary scholar, would be the main force. "Here, old Shotsai, this is good stuff. It's called the bone-strengthening powder. You've come at the right time. I was wondering when I should send it to you." While they were talking, Zhang Feng put a big bowl of bone-strengthening powder in front of the old elementary scholar. The old elementary scholar put down the bowl and sniffed, looking at the paste in the bowl with a face full of surprise. "This is bone-strengthening powder. As the name suggests, eating it can strengthen the bones and the body." Hearing this, the old elementary scholar held the bowl with both hands. Ignoring the fact that it was scalding his mouth, he took a deep breath and savored the taste in his mouth. Slowly, he closed his eyes and let out a moan of pleasure. "Wonderful! What is this made of? How can it be so delicious?" "This, old elementary scholar. Let me keep you in suspense for a while. I'll tell you later." Zhang Feng smiled and filled the old elementary scholar's cup. He said, "I know that you don't come to the Three Treasures Palace for no reason. Just tell me, have you taken a fancy to a young wife?" "Nonsense. How can the old man be a bastard like you?" The old elementary scholar couldn't take it anymore. He glared at Zhang Feng. Then he said slowly, "Isn't the Dragon Boat Festival just over? Originally, there was going to be a lantern festival this year, but because of these damn locusts, it was cancelled. However, the poetry festival is still going on. I think, with your ability and for the sake of the academy in the future, you should still go for—" "No!" Without waiting for the old scholar to finish his words, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and rejected him. Who was he? He was just a plagiarist. How could he compete with those awesome people? Although poetry was not very popular in the early Tang dynasty, it didn't mean that it didn't exist. Take banknotes, for example. He had only read in the records of the grand historian that banknotes were popular during the Song dynasty. But who would have thought that banknotes were already in existence in the Tang dynasty? Although the scale was not very large and there were very few users, at the very least, this thing had evolved from the Tang dynasty. And that was Li Bai. Although he hadn't been born yet, there were still some awesome people at this time. If he went against them at this time, wouldn't he be courting death? Therefore, Zhang Feng decisively refused. Besides, when the academy was opened, who the hell said that he would teach everyone? He didn't want to go against the Imperial College and the Imperial Court at this time. What he taught was basically incompatible with the things in this world. He just wanted to keep a low profile. He didn't want those literary masters, great scholars, and civil officials in the Imperial Court to know his name. Once they knew. Haha. I wish you good luck in your next life. Chapter 365. But how could the old scholar listen to him? He threw something at him. I know you don't want to go. But do you know that your concubine will be going this time? Furthermore, she's the main character. Don't you want to go and support your concubine? Do you want people to say that you're a coward? You should know that you're the one who broke Miss Jingshu's vow and that song. Every year, during the Dragon Boat Festival and Mid-Autumn Festival, Jingshu would perform this song at the Yen Lai restaurant, which is the poetry festival held by the royal family. Now that you've broken this song, you should consider the consequences yourself. Do you want people to point at you from behind? Or do you want to use your talents to make them completely give up on you? You should consider it. While talking, the old elementary scholar happily drank the bone-strengthening powder, ate the side dishes, and drank the wine. He no longer paid any attention to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng's face was very ugly now. He wanted to hit someone. He wanted to hit Chen Tinyu. If he could beat him. This bastard, if it weren't for him, how could I have a concubine out of nowhere? Although Jingshu was indeed very beautiful, he only wanted to do his own things and prepare for entering the imperial court in the future. At this time, he had to marry and take in a concubine. How could he live well? He didn't dare to go through the hardships of his previous life again. In his previous life, he listened to other people's nonsense and got married first, then started his career. Well, he didn't get to meet the campus belle, but he got to meet a pretty good girl and got married in a daze. He originally thought that after marriage would be the same as before. But, damn it, he couldn't drink wine. He couldn't play games. He even messed up the postgraduate entrance examination. From time to time, he had to hand in all the money, and he had to take care of the oil, salt, sauce, vinegar, and tea. This marriage had ruined his studies. In the end, he even got a divorce. He didn't want to go through such a terrible thing again. But this Jingshu, he couldn't not go and meet her. After all, she was now his nominal concubine, and the whole city knew about it. If he flinched at this time, given the pride of women in Chang'an, he would definitely jump into the river or hang himself. This mess, things that had already been suppressed might be stirred up again. At that time, he would be in for a lot of fun. Moreover, why did this Jingshu look so similar to the campus belle that he had a crush on in his previous life? F***CK. Alright, I'll go, alright? Zhang Feng compromised. Only then did the old scholar smile happily. That's right. A man should have his own responsibilities. A man who doesn't even care about his own woman is not fit to be called a man. Zhang Feng pursed his lips. He ignored the old scholar. In any case, whatever the other party said, he would just do as he was told. After 3 rounds of wine, the old scholar finally realized what was going on. He stood up unsteadily and picked out 2 large jugs of wine from the counter. Fengzi, do you have any more of this? It tastes really good. I'll bring some back to try. Alright, I've already prepared it for you. While speaking, Zhang Feng took out an oiled paper bag containing 3 caddies of wine from the counter. He said, Old scholar, although this stuff is good, you can't eat too much of it. Although it's good for tonics, eating too much of it will also kill you. At most, 2 big bowls a day. Don't eat too much. It's best to eat it with corn, do you hear me? Alright. By the way, you must be on time for the poetry gathering tomorrow night. Alright. Zhang Feng took out a package of mugwort from the corner of the door and stuffed it into the old scholar's arms. Only then did the old scholar stagger away. Zhang Feng rubbed his forehead and then lay down on the recliner, worrying. He could understand everything clearly, but he really wasn't prepared for this blind date and this concubine who appeared out of nowhere. Although he did have a good impression of this Jingshu, they had only met once and spoken twice. Was this love? Not really. At most, it was a gamble. Besides, Jingshu had too many troubles behind her. If he didn't handle it well, he would be in endless trouble at any moment. The best way was to get an official position. At that time, who would dare to oppose him? But Jingshu wasn't a problem. The biggest problem was the marriage of the Zhang family. The old scholar didn't mention it at all, as if he had long forgotten about it. However, he knew that it was still there. And this was the biggest problem. According to the customs of the Tang dynasty, marriage was a troublesome matter. Not only was it cumbersome, but a woman from a rich family, especially one with a little bit of talent, was not easy to fool. If you said that she was stupid or didn't understand these things, that would be fine. But from the letter that Cui brought to him last time, he only saw shrewdness. Moreover, Zhang Feng didn't dare to try the fear of marriage at this time. Everything had to be delayed. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel that whether it was modern or ancient times, this man, it was too difficult. Chapter 366. In the political announcement hall, Li Shimin was sitting still. It was the same for all the ministers. Everyone's backs were ramrod straight. Even the generals were wearing armor that they hadn't worn for a long time. They were even allowed to bring their weapons to the palace. What kind of occasion was this? This was a time to show off the might of the Tang dynasty. To put it bluntly, it was a time to show off. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne with a dignified expression. When the Jinwu guards outside the hall signaled the arrival of the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Summon the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun to the hall. The emperor has decreed that the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun should be summoned to the hall. The emperor has decreed that the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun should be summoned to the emperor. Summon." Following the three shouts of the Jinwu guards, two people wearing beast-skin skirts with all kinds of beads hanging from their bodies and a string of heaven beads in their hands respectfully entered the political announcement hall. This time, Tubo didn't send Solons, but it seemed that Tubo had sent someone extraordinary. This person had a big belly and a round waist. He wasn't tall, but he had a red brandy nose. He squinted his eyes and observed the civil and military officials from time to time, but he didn't have a trace of satisfaction. On the other hand, the envoys from Tuyuhun, although they were wearing the same clothes as the envoys from Tubo, they were thin and tall like bamboo. When they saw the weapons that Cheng Yaojin and the others were wearing, they couldn't help but have a dignified expression. Even the mustache on the corner of their mouths seemed to be trembling, because, while he was looking at the generals, all of them were displaying their most awe-inspiring side. Everyone's hands were on the hilts of their swords. Cheng Yaojin was even holding the broad axe in his arms and gently tapping the blade of the axe. Every military general's eyes were like knives as they stared at the two of them. As for the person at the top of the hall, that is, Li Shimin, dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe, he didn't even dare to look at him. "Halt, intruder!" When the two of them were about to overtake Wei Zheng, who was sitting at the head of the table, little Gizi shouted coldly. Only then did the two of them stop and hurriedly kneel on the ground. "Tubo's envoy, Badargan, pays respect to your majesty, King of Tang. Tuyuhun envoy Ao Rij pays respect to your majesty, King of Tang. Rise!" Li Shimin waved his sleeve majestically. Then he said, "Give him a seat." A moment later, a little eunuch carried two praying mats and placed them beside the two of them. At this time, the two of them thanked Li Shimin before sitting down. Li Shimin had been observing the two of them from the moment they entered the door. From their eyes and expressions, he could see that the role this time was definitely not as simple as the previous time. Although Ao Rij seemed to be trembling with fear, but who was Li Shimin? From the other parties in different eyes, he could see that he was pretending. These two people were not easy to deal with. "I wonder why the two of you came from afar?" "Replying to your majesty." Badargan cupped his fists and stood up. "This time, we came to the Tang dynasty to ask for help." "Oh, as far as I know, hasn't your Tubo drought stopped? What are you here to ask for?" Badargan's eyes flashed. "Replying to your majesty, you might not know, but 15 days ago, a locust plague broke out in my Tubo and was out of control. The crops and seedlings that had just been saved became food for the locusts. Therefore, I, Wang Songzanbu, specially ordered this one to come and ask for your majesty's help. But before this one came to the Tang dynasty, I thought that since the Tang dynasty could solve the drought in Longyu province, they would also be able to solve this locust plague. But this one... Bedargan didn't finish his words, but it made all the officials angry. Without waiting for them to speak, Li Shimin lightly waved his hand and stopped them. He smiled and asked, "Then, what is your purpose of coming here?" Originally, when this one came to the Tang dynasty, this one felt that this locust plague was a punishment from the heavens. Even the strong Tang dynasty couldn't compete with it. That also means that this locust plague is really undefeatable. Therefore, this one originally wanted to ask for help from the Tang dynasty to buy some food. Humph! Preposterous! Presumptuous! In an instant, some officials were angry. However, Bedargan ignored the crowd and sighed. But 3 days ago, this one was in the Honglu temple and suddenly found that the locusts that were flying all over the sky in the entire imperial city of the Tang dynasty had disappeared. And it happened overnight. This matter touched this one. So this one prayed to the heavens in the Honglu temple. Finally, I learned that it was His Majesty's courage and wisdom that made that heavenly punishment avoid the imperial city. Therefore, this one now wants to ask His Majesty the Tang emperors to save all the people of Tubo. I think that the benevolent His Majesty the Tang emperor would not want to see the suffering of his allies. Bedargan's words were very smooth. He didn't hide his thoughts and directly said them. Then he flattered Li Shimin. This move was vicious. Too vicious. This was flattery. Li Shimin smiled faintly. He looked at Ao Raj and asked, "Then, envoy from Tuyuhun, what is your purpose?" Chapter 367. Your Majesty, the purpose of my visit is the same as Envoy Bedargan's. Our 3 countries have always helped and supported each other to achieve today's prosperity. My king also hopes to establish a century-old brotherhood with your Majesty. Sure enough, neither of them is easy to deal with. Li Shimin could not help but sigh in his heart. Brotherhood and flattery. It's going to be difficult to deal with this time. Li Shimin involuntarily glanced at the group of civil officials. Do you have any good ideas? Minister of Agriculture? Minister of Agriculture, do you have any good ideas? Tell me. Li Shimin stopped talking after he finished speaking. The Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Agriculture hurriedly got up and bowed. Then, they looked at the two and said, "Gentlemen, although the Tang dynasty does have a way to control the locust plague, we have spent a lot of money and resources. But as all of you can see, we've expended a great deal of manpower, resources, and wealth for this matter. Moreover, my great Tang doesn't have much food, and all of you know that my great Tang has only just been pacified. All of us are still hungry, so I feel that we should discuss this matter later." Minister. Bedargan cupped his fists lightly. He saw that Li Shimin closed his eyes slightly, as if he did not intend to do anything about it. He was a little angry. He said, "As far as I know, now the warehouse of Chang'an City is almost full of grain. Our 2 countries are diplomatic, so I hope Minister can lend a helping hand to help our friends." Minister, Envoy Bedargan is right. As far as I know, this locust plague is a comprehensive outbreak. If we don't control it from the source, once the locust plague breaks out, all of us will suffer losses. There is a saying in the Tang dynasty, when the nest is overturned, there are no eggs intact. I hope your Majesty will think about it carefully. This? The Minister of Agriculture slightly frowned. He glanced at the Minister of Agriculture beside him and asked, "Mr. Zhang, how's the harvest of all the farmlands in the Tang dynasty this year?" The Minister of Agriculture frowned and thought for a while before saying, "Minister, this year, the drought in the north and the floods in the south have caused the Tang dynasty's harvest to be negative." The Minister of Agriculture shrugged and said awkwardly, "Dear envoys, as you can see, it's not that the Tang dynasty doesn't want to help. It's just that the Tang dynasty doesn't have enough food." "I don't think so. Previously, the Tang dynasty exchanged a huge amount of food from Tubo and Tuyuhun for the water we'll use to treat the drought. Are you not willing to take out a little to help us now?" Bardal was enraged. Was he trying to deny it after eating his fill? His heart was bleeding at the thought of so much food flowing into the pockets of the Tang dynasty. Now Tubo was on the brink of death. In the past, there were still some weeds, wild vegetables, and leaves to eat. But now, the locust plague broke out, and more than half of the cattle and sheep starved to death. The number of people starved to death was also increasing day by day. If this situation was delayed, wouldn't the country be destroyed? How could the Tang dynasty not know this? But what did he mean now? Was he waiting to see the destruction of the country? Sir Envoy. Oh right, Sir Envoy Bedargan. Please calm down. At the right moment, Zhang Sun Wuji stood up with a smile and said slowly, "We are also aware of your situation. However, you have also seen the locust plague. This is a full-scale outbreak, and the Tang dynasty is also suffering from a locust plague at this time. Although the source of the locust plague is in Tubo and Tuyuhun, let's not talk about it now. Let's talk about this matter. You also know that once the plague of locusts breaks out, everyone will starve, and my great Tang is no exception. How about this? I have a suggestion. Will the two of you listen to it?" "Oh, dear envoy, what good idea do you have? Quickly tell it to me." Li Shimin hit the nail on the head, leaving the two of them no chance to refute. Zhang Sun Wuji bowed and thanked Li Shimin. Then he said, "Your Majesty, I have been thinking about this when the two of you arrived in Chang'an. It was not until now that I have a clue. Here is my idea. Now that the Tang dynasty and Tubo and Tuyuhun are short of food, the locust plague has broken out at the same time. This is a difficult problem. If we don't save them, the world will say that your Majesty is not merciful. But if we save them, won't the Tang dynasty starve?" Li Shimin frowned and pretended to be troubled. "What do you mean? So I think we should help now, but it must not be paid. Otherwise, the people of the Tang dynasty will not accept it. So I boldly came up with a countermeasure. According to my understanding, most of the livestock in Tubo and Tuyuhun, even chickens, ducks, pigs, and so on have starved to death. If we help at this time, as long as they give us pigs, cows, sheep, chickens, ducks, and other livestock, especially cows, sheep, chickens, ducks, and horses, then the people of the Tang dynasty will be convinced. Your Majesty, what do you think?" "What? This? Your Excellency, don't you think you are going too far by doing this?" But before the two of them could finish, the ministers in the political announcement hall praised in unison. "What do you mean by going too far? This is the fairest trade." "Yes. Are you saving people or what? I think Lord Jiangxuan's plan is wonderful. We think this plan is brilliant. Your Majesty, we think this plan is the only way to solve the locust plague in the 3 countries. Chapter 368. Aorige and Bardal became anxious. What is the meaning of this? Isn't this a discussion? You don't even want our opinion? It's decided just like that? When did I agree to exchange our cattle, sheep, and horses for food? If that's the case, when the plague of locusts is over, what will be left of our country? Without a horse, without a single cow, won't we still have to wait for death?" At this moment, Li Shimin listened to everyone's words and kept nodding. "I also feel that this method is the best. It can make the people of my Tang dynasty accept wholeheartedly, and it can also end this plague of locusts in the shortest time possible. Gentlemen, what do you think of this plan? If it's possible, I will now issue a decree that tomorrow, there will be 30,000 dan of grain set off from Longyu Road and enter your 2 countries. Wait, Your Majesty, this matter still needs to be discussed." Bardal became anxious. He hurriedly stopped them and said to Aorige, "This method is not appropriate. If so, although it can solve the food problem, the root of the plague of locusts is still unsolved. Moreover, once this matter is over, all the livestock in my country will be gone. This..." Li Shimin was slightly unhappy. "Then what do you mean? How should we stop the mouths of the people of the Tang dynasty?" This matter, Zhang Sun Wuji, Wei Zheng, and all the officials listened to the decree. Today, in this political announcement palace, you all will discuss this matter. I will wait for your final decision in the imperial study. After saying that, Li Shimin left with a frosty expression. "Farewell, Your Majesty." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. His Majesty must be angry. However, Li Shimin immediately smiled the moment he entered the back hall. At this moment, the two of them had already entered the trap. As for the result, he didn't need to see it anymore. In the political announcement palace, Bardal and Aorij were stunned. What did the Tang emperors mean? He left just like that? This, however, when they recalled that His Majesty had said that the matter would be settled today, they didn't think too much about it. This was what they wanted. The fact that the two of them could come to the Tang dynasty this time meant that they were the best negotiators in their country. As for how far the discussion could go, the fact that His Majesty didn't directly refuse meant that there was still room for discussion. Bardergan could not help but cry out in grief. "My lords, this plague of locusts is no small matter. Look outside Chang'an City. Are you willing to see what happened to me, Tubo, as an example? I hope you can. Lord Envoy, let's not rush. Since His Majesty said that we should discuss this matter slowly, why don't we discuss it slowly? Let me comb it for you." Zhang Sun Wuji patted Badargan's shoulder and said, "I know how you feel, and the Tang dynasty doesn't want those bastards of yours. We just want the people of the Tang dynasty to rest assured and not worry. If that's the case, we'll pay for it. How about we pay for it?" Aorij narrowed his eyes and said, "Lord Envoy, what you said is wrong." At this time, as soon as he spoke, the civil officials couldn't sit still anymore. "Look at the Tang dynasty and your Tubo and Tuyuhun. How can we ask for your money? Even when we helped you deal with the drought, we didn't ask for any money, right? So this time, talking about money will hurt feelings. And in the current situation, money is useless. Think about it, everyone is short of food, right? Moreover, we're helping you raise your livestock. After this year, when spring comes next year, we'll return your cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens, and ducks intact. Isn't that better?" The civil officials spoke one after another. At this time, Bardergan also exploded. He pointed at a white-bearded old official in front of him and shouted, "Like hell I'll believe you. You're a bad old man. Do you think I don't know that we'll return these livestock once they're in your hands?" The old man wasn't angry or angry. Instead, he patiently explained, "Lord Envoy, you're thinking too much. My Tang dynasty has vast land and abundant resources. Your Tuyuhun is just a small place. Those few horses, cows, and sheep aren't even enough for my Long Yu Dao's output. Do you think my Tang dynasty will care about them? His Majesty has said that this is to reassure the people. Think about it. The food now is life-saving. Are you taking the food back for people to eat, for the people to eat, or for these animals to eat? And now the locusts have eaten up everywhere. What are you going to feed them?" Bardergan seriously suspected that these people were cursing, but he didn't have any evidence. But he was clear about this. Even if there were 1,000 cows, 10,000 horses, 10,000 sheep, and 10,000 pigs in Tubo, those chickens and ducks were not included. In a year, 500 cows and 3,000 horses would give birth to cubs. Who would they belong to? When the time came, they would desperately squeeze these livestock to produce livestock. Even if they sent them back next year, they would only be old, weak, sick, and disabled. Wouldn't this be a year of free labor for the Tang dynasty? Were they stupid? Moreover, the matter of how to control the locust plague hadn't been mentioned yet. Were they really so confident that they could do it? Thinking of this, Bardergan suddenly shouted, "No! It's impossible to exchange livestock for food. Let's talk about controlling the locust plague first, then we'll talk about this." Chapter 369. Yesterday, after Li Shimin hosted a banquet for everyone, he discussed with the officials. After that, he discussed with the other officials how to deal with the locust plague. He even told them about Zhang Feng's plan without holding anything back. He also told them about how to set up a bone-strengthening powder factory and how to collect locusts. In fact, it was very simple. That was to use the human wave tactic and the drug to collect locusts. However, now that they had encountered Tubo and Tuyuhun, they had to think about it carefully. This plan could be used in the Tang dynasty. What was it? It was to generate revenue for the Tang dynasty, stimulate consumption, and make a lot of money. However, once this method was spread, how much money would the Tang dynasty make? No more. Therefore, the officials were not stupid. Therefore, everyone used their imagination to the best of their ability. After having lunch in the imperial palace yesterday, they discussed a set of targeted policies. That was to use such a move against their own people. But what about against Tufan? I have the drug, but Lao Tzu will grind it into powder and you'll buy it. Then, the drug would not be as mild as the Tang dynasty's pesticide. As long as it could kill locusts. As for the rest, that would depend on their own luck. Moreover, there was one more important point. That was the planned army of chickens, ducks, and pigs. The Tang dynasty could not collect so many chickens and ducks from all over the world in a short time, and it would take a lot of time and energy. It was better to collect materials locally. Didn't Tubo want to beg me? Fine. Show me your sincerity. I'll help you raise these things for free. Then, these things will have to work for me. Let's talk about the chickens, ducks, and pigs first. Someone did a calculation. If the two countries, Jianan Circuit, Longyu Circuit, and Yuzhou Circuit could gather tens of millions of chickens, ducks, and pigs, and so on, they would first use the pesticide to stun these things, then mobilize the army and the people to catch and collect them. Then, they would send these animals to eat. Not only could they do it all at once, but they could also make the chickens, ducks, and pigs look for food on their own. They did not even need to be fed. Moreover, they could get countless eggs every day. What was that? That was another way to generate revenue, and all of that was for free. And that pig's head. He would give birth to piglets, wouldn't he? Then, the piglet that was born would be his. Borrowing the chicken to lay eggs. This group of civil officials was very crafty. Therefore, Li Shimin was not worried about this matter. He left it to them to deal with. In the face of great benefits, these ministers were unusually united. What about cattle, sheep, horses, and fodder? No. If the locusts were ground into powder, not only could it be eaten by humans, it could also be eaten by livestock. When the time comes, the strong ones will stay and the old, weak, sick, and disabled will be replaced. I don't want your cattle, sheep, or horses. If you give me 10 million now, when I return it to you, as long as it's enough, I don't care if you're an old horse or something, as long as you have 4 hooves. Everyone in the political announcement hall was clear on this point. At this moment, everyone was quarreling over this matter. Even Bardal and Ao Raj were roaring until their throats were hoarse. But since they were alone, they could only swallow the grievance in their hearts and sign this agreement with Zhang Sun Wuji. They even stamped a bright red palm print on it. Afterwards, Chang Yaojin personally escorted this item to Li Shimin. Only then did the ministers feel as if they had won a battle. They were all grinning from ear to ear. Old brother, you guys have profited from this matter. Zhang Sun Wuji patted Bardal and Ao Raj's shoulders. The two of them nearly beat up Zhang Sun Wuji. He was 2F** King Shameless. You can even say such words? Zhang Sun Wuji acted as though he did not see it and slowly said, Come. Let me calculate the debt for you guys. You will understand once you see it. Look, this food, I am giving it to you for free, right? You don't need to pay a single cent. We will also help you raise the livestock for free. Otherwise, when your locust plague is over, do you think that under the hunger, the crazy people will not slaughter the livestock to fill their stomachs? Am I right? Look again. The way to control the locusts is extremely complicated and the price is extremely high. The things I use to control the locusts also cost money. As I said before, I will charge you 1 tael of gold per caddy of medicinal powder. It's not expensive, right? Bardal and Ao Raj suppressed the grievance in their hearts. But what good idea could they have now? If there were other methods, they would have gone to help India or the Turks long ago. But their relationship with India had always been very delicate. It was very easy to lead a wolf into the house. And the Turks were also suffering from the same thing. Then only the Tang dynasty was left. Although everything seemed to be very stable, the two of them still faintly felt uncomfortable. And when they came again, it was already within their expectations. They had a lot of gold. At most, after the locust plague was over, they would dig for gold for a few years and the money would be back. But the only thing that felt heartache was still the livestock. The only thing they did not understand was why the Tang dynasty was so kind this time. The two of them looked at each other with a bitter smile. Then they weakly cupped their hands. This matter is settled. We will not disturb you any further. We hope that Lord Zhongsun and the lords can put in a few good words in front of His Majesty the Emperor. At that time we will definitely thank you greatly. Good, good, good. Everything can be discussed. Alright, let's go. It's noon, time for lunch. This official has set up a banquet at Swallow Descent Restaurant. If the two of you do not mind, please come to Swallow Descent Restaurant. Chapter 370. How is it? Chang Yaojin entered the imperial study. Li Shimin asked. It's fine. Everything is going according to plan. Good, good. Pass down the order. Immediately launch an attack on public opinion and completely control the locusts. There must be no mistakes. At the same time, spread the news of the bone-strengthening powder. Tell Zhongsun Wuji about this matter and have him handle it. Also, go to the Longyu circuit and keep a close eye on the situation of the Turks. Also, do not hesitate to spread the news of the exchange of grain for livestock to the Turks. Got it? Chang Yaojin hurriedly got down on one knee and said, This general obeys the decree. After Chang Yaojin left, Wei Zheng hurried over. The moment he entered the imperial study, he ran into Li Shimin, who was on his way out. Li Shimin walked with Wei Zheng as he asked, Beloved subject, what brings you here? This old subject is worried about Miss Jingshu. Your Majesty, you also know about the matter between Miss Jingshu and Brother Zhongfeng. But is it appropriate to talk about the banquet for the Tubo envoy at Swallow Descent Pavilion? Li Shimin slightly frowned. Swallow Descent Pavilion was divided into an inner and outer courtyard. The outer courtyard was the courtyard that was open to Chang'an, while the inner courtyard was the collection of women with mystical abilities from Chang'an and even the Tang dynasty. For example, there were those who could play musical instruments, those who were brimming with talent, those who were court prostitutes, or those who were offered to the Tang dynasty by foreign countries. Jingshu, on the other hand, was rather special. She had originally been demoted to a court prostitute, but because of certain matters, she had become a musical prostitute. Moreover, because she had mastered a mystical zither music and her innate beauty, she had instantly become the most wondrous woman in Chang'an. Li Shimin also intended to introduce her to Zhongfeng. In his opinion, if the two of them could succeed, it would be too wonderful. Moreover, didn't this Zhongfeng once ask him that he wanted to marry the most beautiful woman? That was why there was the matter of Cheng Chumo bringing Zhongfeng to barge into Swallow Descent Tower at night. However, Li Shimin had forgotten about this. Basically, Jingshu would always be present when he invited foreign envoys. But this time, all of the officials will be there. If this matter is leaked out, wouldn't it mean that I will harm Brother Zhongfeng? It would have been fine if he hadn't thought about it, but now that he thought about it, Li Shimin had a vague feeling that something was wrong. How about this? My dear minister, immediately send a decree to Zhongsun Wuji to change the location of the banquet to the imperial garden. This, Your Majesty, isn't this kind of banquet a bit inappropriate? Li Shimin shook his head. Forget it, now isn't the time to think about this. Pass down the matter of Jingshu. From now on, treat it as if she doesn't exist. No one is to take the initiative to mention it. If someone asks, just say that you don't know. This subject obeys the decree. Wei Zheng hurriedly cupped his fists and prepared to leave. However, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly stopped. Your Majesty, this subject still has one more matter. The Duanwu poetry meet is about to begin. Will Brother Zhongfeng be there? Li Shimin was also stunned. The poetry meet had been decided long ago. Jingshu would definitely be there, and she would also announce the matter that was vaguely mentioned last time. Forget it, you should deal with this matter first. In the future, whether it's you or Zhongsun, you should personally make a trip to Brother Zhongfeng's place and ask him. If it really doesn't work, cancel this poetry meet. Yes. Wei Jing left. However, before he walked out of the Vermilion Bird Gate, he saw Du Ruhui sitting at the Vermilion Bird Gate. Wei Zhang couldn't help but go up and say something to him. Prime Minister Wei, you mean you want me to go? Yes. The sooner this matter is done, the better. We can't let Brother Zhongfeng's identity be exposed. Once his name is out, it will definitely attract Guanlong's attention. For him, this is very bad. Then fine. I'm also waiting for you here. Du Ruhui heard this and nodded. However, Wei Zheng was stunned. What are you waiting for me for? Du Ruhui bitterly smiled. Do you still remember the mathematical formula that Brother Zhangfeng gave to my son? I don't know what kind of magic this thing has. My unfilial son actually hid in his room and recited this thing all day long. I also studied it for a while. This thing is indeed very profound and obscure, so I want to see Brother Zhangfeng. At the same time, I also made a copy of this for you. It's fine, you can also study it. While speaking, Du Ruhui took out a copy of the mathematical formula that Du Go had copied and handed it to Wei Zheng. Then he said, Actually, I've long wanted to visit Brother Zhangfeng, but I haven't had the time. Since the locust plague has been resolved, do you want to go together? Wei Zheng looked at the thing in his hand in shock. In fact, he had seen this thing on the emperor's desk before. It was actually able to make Du Go addicted to it, and now it was said that the crown prince was also addicted to it. Was it really that magical? However, in the face of Du Ruhui's invitation, Wei Zheng shook his head and said, I won't go for now. I still have something to do. What's the matter? Jing Shu. Oh? Du Ruhui suddenly thought of something and didn't waste any more words. After all, this was not the place to talk. Moreover, both of them were smart people. They understood everything as soon as they spoke. The two cupped their hands and then hurriedly left. Chapter 371. Zhang Feng was very excited, because soon he would be able to ride a tricycle. In the crucible, the molten iron was boiling, and the sweat on Zhang Feng's face was flowing like rain. But he was happy. There were no screws now, but could this be a problem for Zhang Feng? No. He thought of a wonderful thing, and that was mortise and tenon. Melt the molten iron and then pour it into mortise and tenon, and then heat it red with fire, pass through the place that needed screws to be fixed, and smash it with a hammer. Although the effect was not as good, it was still passable. At least it would not fall apart. However, at this moment, someone knocked on the door of his tavern again. This made Zhang Feng speechless. Although the other parts of the tricycle were hidden, this small crucible was still very conspicuous. If it was someone who did not know this thing, he would not understand. Unless he was a transmigrator, otherwise who would recognize this? No, there was another kind of person, and that was a carpenter. Or a blacksmith. But Zhang Feng's intuition told him that the person who came was either the old Shotsai, old He, or Guzi. But it was strange. Last time, after Guzi, Zhuzi, and the others heard from the drunk old scholar that he was going to open an academy, they basically stopped coming. It seemed to be Zhu Zi's father's idea. However, Zhang Feng was busy these days and did not have time to ask. This matter could only be discussed after the academy was opened. Knock, knock, knock. Zhang Feng dared to extinguish the crucible, and the door was knocked again. Zhang Feng hurriedly got up and shouted as he walked, I'm coming. I'm coming. The door is not locked. Just open it. But no one said anything. This made Zhang Feng a little confused. He opened the door. But he finally understood. What was the reason for this? Old Du? Why are you here? Come in quickly. The newcomer was Du Ruhui, who was dressed in plain clothes. When he saw Zhang Feng open the door, he instinctively cupped his fists. However, he was pulled inside by Zhang Feng. Then he closed the door again. However, in that short moment, at least 30 locusts flew into the tavern. After asking Du Ruhui to sit down, Zhang Feng asked in confusion, Old Du, you're here today? It's all because of that brat Dabing. Du Ruhui said snappily, What's wrong with flatbread? Zhang Feng was shocked. Could it be that this guy had gone crazy from studying the division formula? He wasn't worried about others, but he was a little worried about calligraphy addict Du Dabing. Back then, it was because this guy was 2F** king long-winded that Zhang Feng gave him this toy. He even deliberately said that he would only be considered a master if he could calculate the division of numbers within 3 digits in one go. Could it be that this guy, Old Du, is Dabing all right? Sigh. He's fine. It's just that these days he hasn't left the house. I've been hearing him in his room all day long. That's why I'm here to ask if you have any good ideas. It can't go on like this. Brother Zhang Feng, can you show me? About this, Zhang Feng was a little confused. This was a good thing. One had to know that in a few decades, this would be a new toy that would sweep through the Great Tang. Wasn't this good? Although there were less than 20 people studying mathematics in the Imperial College during De Ao's time, what did this mean? However, these 20 people were the elites of the elites in the end. They basically established the legacy of Xinguan, Wu Zetian's Golden Age, and even the Kaiyuan Golden Age later on. They laid a foundation that couldn't be ignored. This was the prosperity created by a group of people whose brain speed was as high as 75% under the leadership of an emperor who appreciated them. Without these people, would the Great Tang be able to prosper and prosper financially? No. At that time, they would be cheated to death, not to mention so many people who coveted the Tang dynasty. Not to mention that the Tang dynasty only needed a ship and a flag to make people tremble. Without these people, perhaps the influence of the Kaiyuan Golden Age of the Tang dynasty would still be there, but it would not be so glorious and even affect the whole world. Why? There were dozens of them, and they did nothing but think about this every day. How could you beat them? That would be a strange thing. Mathematics. It not only included addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It also included the twists and turns of military planning, the division of geographical routes, and so on. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng elbowed Du Ruhui mysteriously and said, "Old Du, let me ask you something." "Say it." "Look at your son, De Bing. He is so obsessed with this. Do you think he will become a monster in 5 years?" Du Ruhui's face darkened and said, "Brother Zhang Feng, this old man came here today for this matter. That man, doesn't he want to protect the country and serve the country? He seems to be obsessed all day. Don't be sarcastic to me." No. Zhang Feng waved his hand repeatedly. "I'm not being sarcastic. To be honest, I believe you have seen the division. Let me ask you, what do you think will happen if this thing is used in business calculation? What if it is used in other places?" Chapter 372. Du Ruhui was a little dumbfounded. He had some understanding of mathematics before. It was precisely because Du Go was obsessed with it that he wanted to see what was so fascinating about it. That was why he seriously researched it. Although this thing was very complicated, it contained things that couldn't be learned anywhere else. Du Ruhui believed that once this thing was really developed, it would definitely have very incomprehensible effects in terms of application, business, people, and so on. After all, this thing was something that Emperor Yang of Sui, Yangguang, had spent a lot of effort to obtain. Although the Sui dynasty had been destroyed, this thing had been preserved. Not for any other reason, but because this thing was really useful. But he thought about how to go like to study these strange things, and he was afraid that if he tirelessly studied this thing all day long, it would not be good for Du Go. For example, being possessed. "Brother Zhang Feng, I know what you mean. I'm just worried that my son will be possessed because of this." "Shouldn't be, right?" Zhang Feng rubbed his chin, not daring to be sure. This guy was a stubborn donkey. Once he fell into it, he would definitely study it to death. He was a little guilty. The last time he gave him the division table on one hand to show off. On the other hand, it was because this guy was too damn annoying. "How about this? I'll give you something else later. When you go back, tell De Bing that this is another method of division called multiplication. If that's the case, won't it make him even more?" "It won't." Zhang Feng shook his head. Lao Tzu had personally come looking for him, and because he wanted to show off last time, he gave this thing to Du Go. Damn it, if something happened, it would be hard to say. Now that he was giving him the multiplication table, although he was a little reluctant, this was something that would happen sooner or later. Anyway, De Bing would be a free tutor. It was only a matter of time before he studied it now and in the future. And this thing, unless he did not care about his life, if he could study it at the same time. In that case, Zhang Feng had nothing to say. He could only give him a thumbs up and ask Chen Tinyu to throw this idiot into the Wei River for a bath. Then, he would ask him to figure out why people could sometimes float on water and sometimes not. Zhang Feng had 10,000 ways to deal with this kind of bookworm. Seeing that Du Ruhui was about to ask about the multiplication table, Zhang Feng hurriedly changed the topic. He knew that if he asked Du Ruhui about it, he wouldn't be able to explain it to him within a day. "Oh right, old Du, you must have come here for the bone-strengthening powder, right?" Zhang Feng had a look that said, "Don't try to lie to me." From time to time, he would glance at Du Ruhui's ruddy face. Du Ruhui sighed. "Actually, that is indeed the case. However, do you know about the Tubo envoy?" "I know." "How was it, old Du? Was my prediction accurate? Like I said, how could His Majesty not think of this? Why? Could it be that Lao Li didn't act ahead of time?" Zhang Feng patted Du Ruhui's shoulder and boasted, "You have tasted the sweetness of this matter. You also know how frightening the prophets are. Among all of you, I think you are the most honest and most like a businessman. Look at Lao Li, he looks like a family head. How could he understand these twists and turns? Also, that old son is too cunning. I advise you to have less contact with him in the future. However, if you all form a business alliance, you know what old son is suited for. As for that old Wei, he is a F**king government official. And old Fong, that idiot. Oh right, does he not have a son?" In front, Du Ruhui was very pleased to hear this. Who didn't want to be flattered? Moreover, it was a strange person like Zhang Feng. However, the more he talked, the more Du Ruhui felt that something was wrong. This idiot was inquiring about their background. He hurriedly chuckled and said, "About that, old Feng's son has always been managing things in Longyu. To tell you the truth, the few of us have already formed a merchant alliance. Otherwise, how could the few of us compete with others? And that Guanlong, you know. Where was Feng Yai? Of course, he was managing things behind the scenes. As one of the 4 great devil kings of Chong, and how could he be well? However, Cheng Chumo, Du Go, Zhang Sun, and the others had all surfaced. If there was no one to clean up the mess behind the scenes, it would have been F**king exposed long ago. Although Du Ruhui knew that this matter couldn't be hidden for long, at least now it was impossible to reveal everything to Zhang Feng. At least, before His Majesty personally announced this matter, whoever dared to say it would be His Majesty's enemy. His Majesty's brother. The only brother that His Majesty would always remember. Once this relationship was revealed, who could guarantee that they would still be brothers? Therefore, before His Majesty said it, none of them dared. Every time they came out, Feng Yai would be like facing a great enemy. Thousands of brocade guards would spread out. Once there were a few people who knew them, they would be invited to drink a cup of tea. As for what tea, that was all up to Feng Yai, the Devil King's preference. The imperial power's special permission was not a joke. Who dared to say anything when the small card was revealed? Even if you were a prince, if your leg was broken, you wouldn't have a place to cry. By the way, Brother Zhang Feng, speaking of which, I heard that you are going to participate in a meeting? Du Ruhui hurriedly changed the topic. He didn't dare to continue this topic. He had experienced Zhang Feng's power. A little carelessness would lead you into a ditch. Zhang Feng heard this and instantly frowned. It's fine if you don't say it. Now that you mention it, I feel like beating someone. Damn bastard. What is Chintinyu doing these days? Why didn't I see him? And those bastards, what are they doing? If it wasn't for those bastards, would I be like this? Du Ruhui's mouth twitched. Don't say that. Didn't I hear that you are going to set up an academy? This is a good thing. And if you are the champion, then Jingshu will rightfully become yours. All the scholars in Chong and wouldn't dare to say anything. You must know that Jingshu is the signature of Yen Lai Restaurant. You should know what kind of place Yen Lai Restaurant is. And in this poetry gathering, not only will you be able to win the beauty, you will also be able to spread the name of the academy. Why not? As for Chantinyu and the others, they are a little busy these days. When Du Ruhui said this, he couldn't help but sigh. Holding up the bowl of wine, he drank. Although Zhang Feng knew about this matter, he also understood that this poetry gathering was a must. But when he thought about how he couldn't even see the shadow of those guys for a few days, he couldn't vent his anger even if he wanted to. This made him a little anxious. But when he saw Du Ruhui acting like this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Old Du, what's wrong with you? Nothing much. I just feel that our family business is getting bigger and bigger. Not only do we have connections with various parties in Jinla, but we're also an allied chamber of commerce. You know everything about this. When there are more people, not only will their mouths be noisy, but there's also one thing about people. Once they see benefits and there's no restraint, trouble will come. Zhang Feng understood. This guy had encountered the drawbacks of the family business. That is, there are too many idle people and too few people who can do things. Zhang Feng couldn't help but laugh. I thought something had happened to you. Old Du. That's it. You. Just put your heart in your stomach. Since you are here today, then as brothers I will give you some pointers. I guarantee that you, Old Du, will enjoy it for the rest of your life. Chapter 373. Really? Du Ruhui was excited. He was already very old this year. Although he had worked hard and the emperor had never mistreated him, he was still somewhat dissatisfied. He hadn't done anything spectacular. The more time he spent with Zhang Feng, and the more he was influenced by Zhang Feng's calligraphy at home, the more Du Ruhui wanted to create something that could be passed down. He didn't know what this thing was, but he had this impulse. Not only him, but everyone who had interacted with Zhang Feng was also like this. Not to mention anything else, just the things that Zhang Feng had said and done, which one of them wasn't enough to shake the heavens and shake the earth. At this moment, seeing Zhang Feng like this, he couldn't help but tear up. Although Du Go was also very hard-working, the father knew better. Du Go and the others were destined to help the crown prince ascend the throne and become important members of the next generation's leadership. But he also knew that Du Go's temperament greatly disappointed the crown prince and the others. There was no other reason than that Du Go was too serious. Moreover, he was a stubborn person. He couldn't compare to Wei Zheng. Li Chengxian couldn't compare to Li Shimin either. Who knew if the Du family would be able to flourish under Du Go's leadership once these old fellows were no longer around? But ever since he learned that Zhang Feng had passed down something different to each of them, Du Ruhui's heart had become heated. He wanted the Du family to be stable. On one hand, it depended on Du Go's fortune in the future. On the other hand, it depended on whether he could create a name for the Du family before 100 years. Something that could ensure that the Du family wouldn't wither for at least 100 years. And this was something that Du Ruhui had been brooding over. Especially after seeing the Locust's great undertaking and the Table of Division, he felt even more urgent. Old Du, although we haven't had many opportunities to meet, I, Zhang Feng, believe that I'm quite good at reading people. From what you said just now, I've actually already seen it. So, when Iron Bull and the others came to find me, I actually already understood. Actually, Old Li has already thought of this long ago, let alone you. If you want your descendants to continue living, then the path of commerce must not be the end. Instead, it must be how you can make use of this relationship to your advantage so that your descendants can enter an official career. That's why you let each of them master a technique, Du Ruhui asked. Zhang Feng nodded. Of course. To be honest, I didn't think so much at first, but in this feudal era, the eldest son is bound to be the heir of the family business. But what about the second son? When you're here, perhaps nothing will be a problem. But have you ever thought about how the brotherhood will develop once you're behind the scenes because of their interests? That's why I saw their dreams in Iron Bull and the others. That's why I said it casually. I didn't expect these bastards to be so good. They're not stupid. They have their own dreams. It's only because they can't get recognition that they're dissolute. They want to prove their existence, or they want to use this method to numb themselves and attract your attention. Du Ruhui's expression couldn't help but change a little. All these years, it was true that they had always been strict with their son. But he knew what Du Go liked. What he liked. As a father, he didn't know at all. Brother Zhang Feng. Du Ruhui felt a little guilty. He sighed heavily and said, "Thank you. Isn't this what brothers should do? Actually, these are all things in the future. At the very least, they have to wait until they graduate from the academy before they can really take charge of some things or enter the imperial court and so on. The current situation is actually very obvious. With a big family and a big business, there are bound to be some problems. People are actually quite contradictory. They always want to be understood, but they're afraid that others will see through them." Zhang Feng sighed and said, "But we will always encounter a lot of things that we don't understand in life. or on the way forward. So if you care too much about other people's opinions, then your life will become a piece of cloth for your crotch. Whatever other people fart, you'll have to take it and bear it. This Du Ruhui was shocked. Although these things seemed easy to understand and were a little vulgar, if one carefully thought about it, they would realize that there were many, many wise sayings contained within. Brother Zhangfeng, you? I've learned something. Du Ruhui was so excited that his whole body was shaking. He didn't speak much. It wasn't that he didn't have anything to say, but that in the imperial court, one sentence would often cause him to fall into the abyss. Moreover, the imperial court was a big divat, so he cared too much about what others said. But now that he thought about it, Du Ruhui suddenly felt enlightened. Just like what Brother Zhangfeng said, if everyone cared too much about what others said and how others felt, then what was the difference between that and a crotchcloth? There was no difference. Involuntarily, Du Ruhui stood up excitedly and bowed like a Confucian. He said, "Today, to be able to have Brother Zhangfeng explain my doubts. Old Du is really... Enough. You're already so old. Don't come and bow to me. Do you still want to give me a memorial tablet?" Chapter 374. Zhangfeng was speechless. The most annoying people were scholars like them. If you're a scholar, you're a dabbler. If you're a businessman, you're also a dabbler. How could he not go and pick up the things that sour elementary scholar had thrown away? Why did they have to be so scholarly? Did they think they were Confucian scholars? Were they not? All right, just remember what I said. As for the rest, you can do as you see fit. Old Du, let me ask you. Have you started the bone-strengthening powder yet? I'm waiting to get my share of the money. Du Ruhui was speechless. Just a moment ago, they were talking about serious matters. Now, they were talking about money? If you really want money, just say it. I believe that as long as the emperor hears about it, he will give it to you no matter how much you want, right? Do you have to be so obsessed with money? It's all right. We're trying it out in Longyu, and the results are good for now. So Tainyo and the others have gone to help. And you know those guys, they're all debauches in Chang'an City. If they go and spread the news, they'll be better off than us old guys. Zhangfeng nodded. Not bad. That's a good idea. But wouldn't it be better if we let this happen in Chang'an? Why should we let it happen in Longyu? Sigh. Du Ruhui sighed. You don't know. The benefits involved in this matter are too terrifying. Moreover, Longyu is the base camp of us old fellows. Last time, the locust eggs incident had already established some connections. It's not as powerful as it is in Chang'an. Therefore, we have no choice but to put it in Longyu. Du Ruhui told Zhangfeng about what had happened after the Fish Emperor had discussed the matter with Zhangfeng. Zhangfeng could not help but hear some clues from it. They did not want to use Chang'an, but had to go to Longyu, a place surrounded by wolves. They had encountered a big problem. Old Du, tell me honestly, did you run into some trouble? Alas, Du Ruhui couldn't help but let out a long sigh when he saw that Zhangfeng was finally on the right track. Brother, my heart is bitter. I was too embarrassed to talk about this at first, but since you asked, it's not good for us to not talk about it. So, sigh. Zhangfeng pursed his lips. Then don't say it. Did you have to show an expression as if Lao Tzu had something on his mind the moment you walked in? This caused Lao Tzu to ponder for a long time. Old Du, we're brothers, so Mynheer knows my temperament. If there's anything you need, just tell me. If I can help, I'll definitely help. But let me say this first. If you offend the emperor or commit any murder or arson, I'll immediately send you to the authorities. Du Ruhui waved his hand. Do I look like someone who would commit murder or arson? It's just that ever since you've established a relationship with Zhangsun Wuji and some people in the imperial court, such things have to be reported. So, Lao Li and the others thought about sending some bone-strengthening powder. But now we're in big trouble. Basically, everyone in Chang'an is here. Old Chen's house is full of copper coins. You say, this? If they only wanted to make money, that would be a good thing. But they just had to King bring their people in. They can't do anything and leave nothing behind. I can't afford to offend them. I want to chase them away, but I can't do it openly. So, Because of this matter, we old brothers have been worrying so much that our hair has turned white. Zhang Feng was speechless. That's it? Yes. No, brother Zhang Feng, we've already done that. Do you still think it's not serious enough? Zhang Feng shrugged and asked in disbelief. I thought it was something serious. Turns out that it's just a trivial matter. Don't you feel embarrassed? We've been friends for almost a year. In this year, whenever you guys drink here, you'd better keep your ears open. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done such a stupid thing. Fine. Zhang Feng slapped his head. If it were someone else, he could really say something. But it was old Chen who did it. And this matter, Zhang Feng thought for a second. Only old Chen could do it. This silly guy. How dare you accept any kind of money? Zhang Feng was speechless. Scold old Chen? He didn't dare. Old Chen's son slapped him to the back. If he scolded old Chen behind his back, wouldn't he send Lao Tzu away with a slap? Fine, fine. Tell old Chen not to accept any kind of money. Be careful that he doesn't give away all the money he earns. We won't get any benefits at all. Sigh. Got it. Du Ruhui nodded like he was pecking rice. Of course, the matter he was asking about was not business. It was the civil and military officials in the imperial court. It was as if these people had fallen into the eyes of money. He was worried that these fellows would go crazy thinking about money and do something illegal. Moreover, they wouldn't do anything in the imperial court. This was also the reason why Du Ruhui had come this time. There were people who did everything else, and they did a good job. But he, the Minister of Personnel, and Fang Xianling, assisted the emperor in handling the imperial court. At this time, because of the locust incident, everything was left to him. However, the order in the imperial court was giving him a headache. He didn't even participate in the emperor's discussion on the management of the locust plague. It was not that he didn't want to, but the imperial court was still operating. At this time, Du Ruhui and Zhang Feng were silent. Du Ruhui was waiting for Zhang Feng to give him an idea. But Zhang Feng was different. He was troubled by something. Chapter 375. Zhang Feng was very conflicted. Once this matter was out, that smart emperor would definitely think of this at the first moment. Definitely, this thing was a great weapon for him to brag about when he went to the imperial court. Moreover, he wanted to use this thing to build a good relationship with Fang Mao, Du Duan, and Wei Zheng. Was it appropriate to say it at this time? However, looking at old Du's worried face, Zhang Feng could not help but feel helpless. Forget it. Old Du. Don't worry about this trivial matter. Sigh. Lao Tzu prepared this thing to build a good relationship with Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Wei Zheng when he goes to the imperial court. Forget it. Forget it. You got lucky. Zhang Feng muttered to himself gloomily. However, Du Ruhui almost blurted out when he heard this. He pointed at his own nose and was about to shout out. Don't wait. I am Du Ruhui. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Although he was excited, Du Ruhui also knew the importance of this matter. Brother Zhang Feng, then I, old Du, will thank you here. When the time comes and you want to enter the imperial court as an official, I, old Du, will definitely give you all I have and recommend you. Heh. Zhang Feng smiled. Old Du, are you doubting me? No, no, no. Du Ruhui waved his hand repeatedly. Zhang Feng did not want to fool him anymore. Moreover, he still had serious business to do. Alright, this matter is very easy to handle. You just have to remember that no matter who it is, they will have to be controlled by you when they go to your territory. As the saying goes, a country has its laws and a family has its rules. As a merchant company, naturally, there are rules to speak of. If everyone is like this, then I advise you not to do this business. The few of us are doing fine. Why are you looking for trouble? Zhang Feng shrugged. Since it's already happened, let's not talk about it anymore. How about you tell Lao Li exactly what happened? Actually, the method is very simple. It's just a sign-in list. What's more, it's a work registration form. Du Ruhui, who was listening carefully, was dumbfounded. What the hell? Sign-in sheet. Sign in at work? What is this? Listen to me first. Zhang Feng waved his hand and poured Du Ruhui a bowl of wine. He took out a plate of fried yellow locusts from the counter and said, "Actually, you can also understand this is going to work. Do you understand? You're the one who works for me. Do you come in the morning and leave after work at night? Only this counts as a day?" "Yes, that makes sense." Du Ruhui nodded thoughtfully. "But this sign-in, what does it mean?" Zhang Feng had so many shocking sentences that they were numb to it, so they were not surprised. However, this new term still surprised Du Ruhui. More than that, he was shocked. How could he not be shocked? At this time, because of the locusts, the court was basically crazy. They were all immersed in it, so much so that many court affairs could not be carried out. If this went on, everyone would want to get rich. How bad would that be? Although the emperor knew about it and did it on purpose, it was not the right time to clean up the mess after the plague of locusts was over. There were many things that had to be done. The trade with Jinla, the Tubo and Tuyuhun, and the plan against the Turks in the future, which one of these things did not need people to do. If there was a slight mistake, it would definitely cause an irreparable disaster. Du Ruhui could not help but be excited. "Brother Zhangfeng, what do you think this sign-in sheet is? Is it a kind of rule?" "No. You can say that it is a kind of rule. But this thing only restricts whether that person is on duty, whether he comes or not, and whether he has done anything. As for the rest, it's up to you. I don't know how you're going to run your Chamber of Commerce, but as for how you're going to run it, you have to figure it out yourself." "Yes, but you just have to remember one thing. Hang this watch in the most conspicuous place. I don't need you to say anything about who is sleeping soundly on duty, or who doesn't come, or who slacks off. For this benefit, I think there are still many people who want to fight to the death for this big business of locusts. When the time comes, you only need to write down the details of each of them working for you in a book and hang it there. People want their faces and trees want their bark. When the time comes, you just need to hand out this soft knife, and there will naturally be countless people who will stab it for you. And it doesn't matter which high official that person is working for. After all, the benefits of the locusts are there, and the meat is only so big, isn't it?" "That's it." Du Ruhui was dumbfounded. However, he had truly heard something that made his hair stand on end. As long as this thing was hung in the imperial palace or the imperial court, who would dare slack off? Who would dare to ignore the emperor's orders? Who would dare to sleep and drink while on duty? Who would dare to not come to the imperial court for no reason, or to just call in sick and have fun at home? Who would dare? Chapter 376. Du Ruhui's turbid eyes involuntarily flashed with a hint of excitement and excitement. Just a moment ago, he was still thinking about how he could do something spectacular in his lifetime. Now, didn't he have it? Didn't that person want to do something? Who didn't? Everyone wanted to, especially people like him, who had basically reached the end of his official position. If he could do something spectacular when he was about to retire, even if he died on the spot, he would not have lived in vain. This was to bring honor to his ancestors. This was the blessing he set up for the next generation of his Du family. At the thought of this, Du Ruhui was so excited that he wanted to get up and bow again, but was pressed down on the bench by Zhang Feng speechlessly. Okay. Do you really want to shorten my life? If you really want to thank me, then do it well and make more money for me. This is the key. This bone-strengthening powder, damn it, if I had known, I wouldn't have told you. Wouldn't it be better if I kept quiet and didn't make a fortune? Zhang Feng was a little depressed. Brother Zhang Feng, today I thank you for clearing my doubts. Today, I won't disturb you anymore. Our Du family will never forget your great kindness. Okay. If there's nothing else, then get out of here. Why are you being so literary? Do you think you are a great writer of that generation? Zhang Feng got up and drove him away speechlessly. Du Ruhui also knew how to behave. He hurriedly got up, dug out 3 taels of silver from his embroidered robe and put it on the table before leaving. He was not stingy, but he really didn't have much money on him. When he walked out of the pub, he looked at the locusts all over the sky. In Du Ruhui's view, how were those locusts? They were just copper coins flying all over the sky. Du Ruhui turned around and glanced at Zhang Feng's little tavern. Only then did he salute Zhang Feng as a peer before hurriedly leaving. Obviously, he forgot to ask Zhang Feng for the multiplication table. At this time, how could he still remember? Even if he remembered, so what? This thing won't run away, they can just come back when the time comes. However, Brother Zhang Feng's method must be implemented as soon as possible. This will play a big role in the Emperor's plan. Furthermore, in the future, all the officials would have to use a new set of rules and regulations. To the Minister of Personnel, this was a very important matter. He had a premonition that if he really did that, the situation in the imperial court would be completely different. Who would dare to slack off? Who would dare to delay? Those who are eyeing this position will do everything they can to take you down. Although it was shameful to do so, so what? However, the thing that Brother Zhang Feng was talking about, could it really be applied? Du Ruhui couldn't help but feel confused again. If this matter was done well, then it would definitely be remembered for eternity. But what if? What if this thing didn't have any miraculous effects and instead made people feel disgusted? Du Ruhui couldn't help but slowly stop in his tracks. Looking at the locusts all over the sky, he couldn't help but think of the faces of everyone in the imperial court. Even the emperor, the princes, the lords, and the local officials. Du Ruhui couldn't help but understand. A thin layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and it couldn't help but drip down. If he followed Zhang Feng's plan and followed it, he would definitely be condemned by the officials in less than a day. This was a business model. He forgot one thing. That was, until the end, they told Zhang Feng that they were businessmen. This thing was suitable for business, but not for the management system of the imperial court. Now that the imperial court had its own set of perfect system, if this thing was introduced at this time, although it could be said to have some effect, it would be the opposite of what the retired emperor and the emperor had set. Although the system of the previous dynasty was followed, to a large extent, there were slight changes. But the current system was the opposite of what the previous system had set. Once he dared to mention it, he would definitely be accused of treason. He dared to change the system set by the emperor and the retired emperor. What was this? If this wasn't treason, then what was? Du Ruhui took a deep breath. He might as well not leave. Sitting under the black locust tree at the entrance of Huitong Square, he stared blankly at the crown of the tree, which still hadn't been eaten up by the locusts. He recalled the original system of the imperial court, the criminal law, and all of them. Then, he compared them with a vague thing in his heart one by one. Slowly, he finally figured it out. It turns out that the key point lies in the completeness of this system. The degree of completeness of this system is too high, and it still needs the officials in the imperial court to supervise the implementation. But once an illegal person takes advantage of this loophole, it will definitely cause a great impact on the order of the imperial court. But what if we add a little reward for good and punish evil to the original system of officials, and this thing of signing in at the imperial court? Chapter 377. For the next few days, all the officials were busy preparing for the locusts. There were even rumors in Chang and city from time to time. The so-called guidance from a master was a punishment from God. It was a supreme auspicious sign given by God out of pity for the Tang dynasty. But the people didn't understand. It had eaten up all the food and even the wild vegetables that everyone liked to eat. How could this thing be auspicious? It was as wide as a yaksha. How could this be called auspicious? The people were puzzled. But at this moment, if you said so, there would definitely be people pointing at your nose and scolding you for being ignorant. Why? Because this news came from the inside of the palace. His Majesty had already said that this thing was an auspicious sign. How could you say that it was a pest with a snap of your fingers? Are you tired of living? Such things kept happening in Chang'an City. As the matter was fermenting, the news of the mysterious bone-strengthening powder had also spread out. It was even more bizarre. In a tea house, the storyteller came early in the morning, which was rare. The locusts were all over the sky. Basically, no one could do anything. If they stayed at home, they would get sick. It was also unbearable to stay with their wives every day. Fortunately, now everyone had a little money left in their pockets. So, This cheap and affordable tea house became the best place for people to escape the summer heat and find work. The tea house, which usually had a bleak business, now became the most popular place in Chang'an City. Bang! When the storyteller, Blind Wang, slapped the tea table hard, the noisy tea house instantly quieted down. Blind Wang was not in a hurry. He slowly pulled out the folding fan from the back of his head and slowly fanned himself. Then, he said, "Dear fellow villagers, today, Blind Wang will talk about something different. Otherwise, if you've already vomited after hearing about other things, I would have King vomited as well." Ha ha ha. The people burst into laughter and were instantly interested. "Blind Wang, what are you going to talk about today? Are you talking about what happened last night with Widow Sun from Happy Village in the east of the city? Or were you chased out by some customer who found out you stole books?" Ah ha ha ha. The laughter of the crowd did not make Blind Wang jump up and down. The people of Chang'an had 3 good things. The first was to squat in Swallow Descent brothel to see the real courtesan. The second was to stroll along the newly built river and stroll around the eastern and western markets with his hands behind his back. However, at this juncture, these 2 things could not be done. Swallow Descent restaurant's doors were locked tightly, afraid that the lecher would not be able to hold himself back and barge in. As for the riverside, the eastern and western markets had become the breeding grounds of the locusts. That fellow, with a single stomp, you could crush several locusts. Who would dare to go out? What about the third one? Naturally, it was because of Blind Wang, but it was very rare. This time, Blind Wang acted as if he didn't hear the teasing of the crowd. He continued to wave the thick, sticky fan with a smile on his face. Even the words on the paper could not be seen. It was as if he had the pearl of wisdom in his hands. Ayaya! Old man is reading a sage's book. How can a scholar like me do such a dirty thing? Today, old man is going to talk about the auspicious signs flying in the sky. Nonsense. When the crowd heard this, they could not help but roll their eyes. It was this old thing again. Blind Wang said slowly, "Last night, I don't know how many of you have heard of the bone-strengthening powder? Bone-strengthening powder? What is that? I seem to have eavesdropped on the boss saying something. It seems that this thing is something extraordinary. Yes, this master is right." Blind Wang suddenly slapped his fan on the palm of his hand and said, "This bone-strengthening powder is indeed a wonderful thing. Last night, outside Taichung Temple, I heard a woman talking about this thing. That woman seemed to be the wife of one of the lords in Taichung Temple. That woman seemed to be asking for the bone-strengthening powder from her old father. I've heard of it. As long as you drink a bowl of the bone-strengthening powder, even though it is only the size of a teacup, it is worth a big bowl of mutton soup." What? This is so magical? Blind Wang, you're not fooling people, are you? How can there be such a thing in this world? Blind Wang shook his head mysteriously. When the crowd was almost finished, he continued, "Not only that, old man also heard that this thing can strengthen the bones. Although it is not the thing that can rejuvenate one's youth, the old man in his 70s or 80s only needs to drink this thing for 3 days to straighten his back in an instant. Moreover, he can carry a bucket of water with one hand and walk for 10 miles without blushing or panting." Hiss! Everyone heard this. They could not help but gasp. "Impossible. Blind Wang. Maybe you're fooling people again. *CK your grandma. If this thing is really so awesome, why haven't we heard of it?" Everyone was furious. However, Blind Wang only moved his lips slightly. This thing fell from heaven when Master Yuan Tiangang prayed to heaven on the birthday of the retired emperor last time. Moreover, the emperor and the retired emperor personally tried it. All the ministers in the court have tried it. Do you think that the emperor is fooling you? This? Chapter 378. Li Shimin was very pleased, especially when he looked at the documents that had been sent back from Chang'an. It was as if he was looking at a lump of gold that had fallen from the sky. The rumors had indeed spread from here. Zhangsun Wuji was very smart when it came to doing things like this. Moreover, he had already done it once. It would be strange if something went wrong again. Moreover, at this time, everyone had been affected by the locust plague. Everyone had suffered. Who wouldn't want to make money at this time? The matter of the bone-strengthening powder had been settled. Next up, just as Li Shimin was happily thinking about what to do next, he suddenly saw a different memorial in the pile of documents. What was different about it? This memorial was actually sent by Du Ruhui in his personal name. Was there a need to do this? Li Shimin looked at the thick memorial and flipped it open curiously. The words on duty reward and punishment system that entered his eyes deeply attracted his attention. Li Shimin couldn't help but be interested. The Minister of Personnel had actually used such a method to hand over the memorial. What did this mean? It was obviously something that could be done by just opening his mouth. That meant, looking at the memorial, the joy on Li Shimin's face slowly froze. Little Gizi, summon Du Ruhui. Yes. Li Shimin's expression turned serious. No wonder he would use such a method to hand over the memorial. If others knew about this, what would it mean? This would be treason. Daring to violate the laws of the imperial court was already a violation of the interests of the imperial family. However, Li Shimin knew that if it were an ordinary person, he wouldn't even look at such a thing. He would just wave his hand. Strike first. However, Du Ruhui was different. If he could say it, it meant that this matter was very serious. Moreover, Li Shimin thought about it. There was indeed a problem with the imperial court system. Moreover, was this really something that Du Ruhui could come up with? He didn't believe it. Instead, he saw Zhang Feng's shadow between the lines. Moreover, didn't Du Ruhui go to Zhang Feng's place the day before yesterday? Thinking of Zhang Feng, Li Shimin's face had a touch of excitement. A moment later, Du Ruhui hurried into the imperial study. This old subject Du Ruhui pays respect to your majesty. Minister Du, please rise. Hurry up and tell me, what's the deal with this reward and punishment? Replying to your majesty. This is something I came across by chance the day before yesterday. Li Shimin pursed his lips. Speak human language. Du Ruhui said, since your majesty has seen through it, this was indeed Brother Zhang Feng's idea. Now, because of the locusts, everyone in the imperial court is united. This is a good thing, but the drawbacks of not doing their duty for a long time still exist. Moreover, now everyone is trying to reap benefits. In the long run, who can respect the discipline of the imperial court? So, you discussed with Brother Zhang Feng and came up with this thing. Li Shimin sat next to Du Ruhui and drank tea. He glanced at the memorial on the table and said, that's right. However, this thing was basically made by this old subject. It was also because of one sentence from Brother Zhang Feng. What sentence? Li Shimin was interested. He said that these people are temporary workers for you. Li Shimin heard this. He couldn't help but frown. But the next moment, he couldn't help but ask, do you mean that the system of the imperial court should be strictly improved? Yes, your majesty. You've seen it before. Everyone is lazy. Although your majesty is in favor of spreading the word, you've also seen that the disadvantages are obvious. That is, the people of the 5 families and 7 nobles, as well as the Guanlong and Shandong nobles, don't do anything for the imperial court. As a result, although there are many people in the imperial court, some of them die of boredom, and some of them die of exhaustion. There are even some who take idle jobs and idle around all day. We couldn't target them before, but now that your majesty has taken a side in the matter of the locusts, if we let them go on like this at this time, who in the imperial court wants to do anything for them? I'm worried that if this kind of thing can't be rectified for a long time, the consequences will be unimaginable if everyone in the imperial court imitates it. The big reshuffle this time is an opportunity. That's why when I went to Brother Zhang Feng's place, I was a little depressed, so I went to Brother Zhang Feng to complain. But Brother Zhang Feng thought it was a small matter, so we talked about it. It was also under Brother Zhang Feng's guidance that I came up with this reward and punishment system. Although this system is new, it's all simplified and added according to the original laws of the Tang dynasty. As he spoke, Du Ruhui excitedly knelt on the ground and said, Your Majesty, this old subject knows the consequences of breaking the laws of the great Tang without permission. Thus, this old subject risks death to request your Majesty to carry out this decree. Li Shimin was speechless. He personally helped Du Ruhui up and said, I didn't say anything. I've also seen this. Approved. Chapter 379. In fact, Li Shimin had long wanted to reorganize the court. Every morning, he basically wanted to kill people. This was before the Locust Plan. Now that everything had been dealt with, it was time to reorganize. But he didn't expect that Du Ruhui had thought ahead of him. How could this not make Li Shimin happy? My dear minister, I approve of this matter. This matter in the court, if I hadn't suppressed the anger in my heart, I would have killed a lot of people. Everyone thinks that I have a good temper, but only you know that I am actually waiting for an opportunity. Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. It's time to reorganize. Li Shimin suddenly felt a little sad. He couldn't predict what would happen if he fought against Guanlong at this time, but this was something that had to be done. A country, a monarch, if he couldn't even control his own people, how could he unify the world? But if they were to clash with these 2 forces right now? One night, Li Shimin worried about this matter for the whole night. The next morning, at the moment when the morning bell rang, Li Shimin arrived at the political announcement hall early. Looking at the empty imperial court, he suddenly and slowly wrote the word Zhen on the Xian paper, and all the ministers who entered the political announcement hall were stunned. But seeing the emperor in a daze, no one dared to speak and stood quietly. When everyone entered the political announcement hall, Xiao Gizi gently called, Your Majesty, it's time to go to court. Li Shimin raised his head and looked at the people in the court. Go to court. Kneel. Long live the emperor. Rise. Li Shimin waved his hand lightly. Is there a memorial today? Hearing this, a minister hurriedly got up and said, replying to the emperor, this old minister has a memorial. Announce. Recently, although the rumors of bone-strengthening powder and locusts have been spread, and the people are running around to tell each other about this matter, and all the people's enthusiasm has soared infinitely. No one complains about this disaster, but there is still a problem. Oh, what is it? Replying to your majesty, this old subject has made some calculations recently. Although we have stored up provisions in and around Chong, and the livestock industry has suffered serious losses. Many livestock have even shown signs of starvation. Emperor, Cheng Yaojin cupped his fists and said, Our army, especially Long Yu, has sent an urgent report. The 100,000 horses in our army have almost run out of fodder. In Yuzhou, the garrison in Chong and Jianan province and other places have also encountered the same problem. The locusts are wreaking havoc. Everything with a bit of green has been gnawed away. What's more, it's the season to fatten up the horses. But Cheng Yaojin didn't say anything. But how could Li Shimin not understand? If things went on like this, sooner or later, all the livestock in the Tang dynasty would starve to death because of the lack of fodder. What was more terrifying was that there would be no war horses left in the army. Emperor, Zhang Sun hesitated for a moment. Li Shimin frowned. Speak. Tubo and Tuyuhun sent news that in 5 days, the first batch of livestock will be delivered to the Tang dynasty from Hezhou, Yazhou, and other places in Jianan province. There will also be some in Longyu province. But the current situation, how much? Li Shimin had a headache. He had thought of everything, but everyone ignored that the locusts had not only gnawed away the Zhuang family, but also the grass and leaves. The livestock were easy to get, but how could they be raised? They couldn't let the grass-eating animals eat locusts, could they? At this time, Xiao Gizi took a memorial from Zhangsun Wuji and handed it to Li Shimin. Tuyuhun will deliver 58,300 war horses, 37,000 cows, 59,000 bulls, 30,000 calves, 39,000 sheep and pigs, chickens, ducks. Looking at the numbers one by one, Li Shimin felt a headache. This, without a doubt, was another source of pressure. They couldn't drive all the livestock to the south, could they? Dear ministers, do you have any good ideas about this? Li Shimin rubbed his forehead and said, At this time, your majesty, I suggest that we don't accept these livestock for the time being. Otherwise, it will undoubtedly make the situation worse. Your majesty, the sudden increase in cattle, Sheep, pigs, chickens, and ducks is still fine. We can just distribute them to the local people, but the horses— Your Majesty, I mean that if these livestock come from Jiangnan province, it's better to send them directly to the south. Now, the south is less affected by the locust plague. As for the livestock in Longyu province, let Longyu know how to raise them properly for the time being. When the time comes, we can collect a batch of fodder from the south to solve the problem. The ministers expressed their opinions one after another. At this time, no one sang a different tune. Because what did this mean? This represented the benefits they could gain. Moreover, they occupied a lot of fields in various places, and there must be a lot of fodder stored here. At this time, if these things were left behind, they would be the ones to benefit in the end. There were no fools here. Every single one of them was very clear. The benefits of this. After discussing for an hour, Li Shimin still couldn't find a suitable solution. Suddenly, he thought of a person in his mind. Perhaps that person would be able to resolve this matter perfectly. He also knew the benefits of this matter. If he did as these people said, wouldn't he get no benefits at all? All right, I already have a countermeasure for this matter. By the way, I have something to announce today. Li Shimin waved his hand. The ministers quieted down in an instant. Li Shimin said slowly, "The order of the imperial court has been following the old system of the previous dynasty since the reign of the retired emperor, and there has been no change. Therefore, I want to announce today that I will make a slight correction to the original system." Chapter 380. Everyone was aghast. Although the improvement of the system was indeed coordinated by the emperor, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Personnel, and other departments, why did it happen today? And why didn't they hear anything about it before? What did it mean? Could it be that this was one of the emperor's methods after he decided to take sides against the locust plague? Everyone was smart enough to know something. They had thought about the reform a long time ago, but they didn't expect it to happen today. Du Ruhui, tell us about the relevant system. After all, it was you and Zhang Sun who made the decision together. Yes. Zhang Sun was confused. What does it have to do with me? But it was obvious that the emperor was dragging him down, so he could only bow his hands and say yes. Then, Zhang Sun Wuji spoke first. Your Majesty, although the system in the imperial court has always been perfect, this old official feels that there are still many flaws in it. Therefore, this old official worked with the Ministry of Personnel to perfect it. Official Du, please come and explain the relevant situation on behalf of the emperor and the other officials. Zhang Sun Wuji kicked the problem to Du Ruhui again. Du Ruhui leisurely took out a memorial from his bosom and said, in view of the fact that there are many idle positions in the treasury of Chang and city and other affairs, or many of them are directly related to each other but no one is in charge of them. At this time, the Tang Empire is just starting to develop in all aspects. Therefore, His Majesty has discussed this matter with me and others and deliberated about it. First, there are too many idle positions, which leads to delays in the daily affairs of the government in various departments, especially in the case of the Chang and local treasury last time. It was a small matter, but it delayed for half a year. What if it was in other places? So, in order to improve the system in the court, we made a series of system updates. Second, there are many things waiting to be done in the Tang dynasty. Look at the emperor's boots. They are all sewn by Empress Zhangsun. Why? Does the emperor lack money for a pair of boots? No, he was trying to save money. Moreover, the amount of money spent every month on idle jobs in the imperial court is thousands of strings of cash. If this kind of practice continues and everyone is like this, then who will carry out the government affairs? That's why I, the emperor, and Lord Zhangsun, the minister of the Ministry of Justice, work together to update the court system. After saying that, only then did Du Ruhui recite the reward and punishment system that he had previously set up in the imperial court. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one was a fool. This was definitely something Du Ruhui would do. But what was the meaning of this Du Ruhui? Do you think everyone is too idle right now? Wasn't this forcing them to their deaths? Everyone was shocked. But when she took a closer look, the emperor was indeed wearing the shoes sewn by Empress Zhangsun. Even the dragon robe on his body showed signs of being mended. How could this be fake? At this time, if anyone dared to say no, they would be punished. Then, if the emperor took off the mending on his clothes, who would say anything? Although everyone was dissatisfied, they didn't dare to say anything now. This was a typical case of giving a sweet date and then giving a heavy blow. Who dared to say anything? Li Shimin carefully observed everyone's expressions and then said slowly, I know that once new things are introduced, many people will definitely feel that it is not good. Today, in the imperial court, if we feel that something is not good, we will solve it in court, okay? If anyone has a different opinion, you can raise it. But who dared to say anything? At this time, even if they were dissatisfied, they would have to wait until later. But at this time, however, Wei Zheng spoke up. Your Majesty, I have something to ask. Speak. Your Majesty, I am slow-witted. I don't know what the reward and punishment system means. Li Shimin touched his chin and said, Mr. Du, tell Prime Minister Wei. Yes, Your Majesty. Prime Minister Wei, to put it bluntly, this is no different from the previous system. However, just like how we handle government affairs every day, if everyone registers their names as if they are attending morning court, then it will be clear at a glance who is here and who is not. Moreover, after being sent back to the Supreme Court for sorting, it will become a record. The advantage of this is that Your Majesty will know at any time who is on duty, what they are doing, who is not coming, and what they are doing. In this way, it can ensure that every order from Your Majesty will be delivered to the officials on time. With several people echoing each other, everyone finally understood. This thing was actually a test. Although the emperor added rewards and punishments, if one did not show up for duty without a reason, he would be fined 1 month of salary. If it was the 4th time, he would be directly demoted by 1 rank. Wasn't this too strict? But what about the rewards? If one signed in every month, he would get an extra half a month of salary. What the hell was this? If one could be on duty every month, he would get bonus points on his political achievements. If there was a fat job, he would be given priority. What the hell was this? Wasn't this too much of a scam? At this time, everyone only felt the pressure. If they were to be like before, they would go drinking after a fight. Those days were gone forever. Now, in everyone's position, who didn't have bloodshot eyes? Once such a thing happened, the fine was a small matter. Losing their job was the real deal, especially if there was a fat job. Where would this fat job come from? Wasn't it the position of everyone? Didn't this mean that now everyone's buttocks were sitting on the edge of a knife? Once they didn't pay attention, they would be finished? Everyone cried in their hearts. But who dared to say anything? They could only grit their teeth and accept it. Chapter 381. Thus, the court session ended in a dull manner. Although the court session was over, the problem was still in front of Li Shimin. That was the matter of animal husbandry. If this matter was not handled well, not only would all the animals and horses of the Tang dynasty be destroyed because of this matter. What would happen if a war broke out at that time? The Tang dynasty would no longer have a war horse to use. There would be no cavalry to contend with the Turks. Imperial study. Li Shimin looked at the barren land outside the window with a worried face. It was supposed to be midsummer, but now? There was nothing but dead branches and leaves. Second brother, are you worried about the locusts again? Zhang Sunwu Go fanned Li Shimin from behind and asked. Sigh. Guanyin maid. Tell me. Now, although the matter of these damned locusts is basically solved and we have food, we forgot to store the fodder. Who would have thought that this plague of locusts would be so serious? And that Brother Zhangfeng is really too much. He didn't explain the matter clearly. Don't say that, Guanyin maid. Li Shimin shook his head and grabbed Zhang Sunwu Go's slender hand. At that time, Brother Zhangfeng did say it, but we underestimated this plague of locusts too much, so we were indecisive. Back then, if I had listened to him and gathered all the chickens, ducks, and pigs, and placed them in Long Yu, then the problem right now would absolutely not be so serious. Right now, even if I wanted to gather chickens and ducks on a large scale, it would be very difficult. Zhang Sunwu Go pouted and said, Then why didn't you only ask for chickens and ducks when you confronted Tubo and the other countries last time? Pigs? Do you think they are stupid? Li Shimin Wu Go tapped Zhang Sunwu Go's forehead. At that time, if we had made a wrong expression, we might have failed last time, let alone asking for chickens, ducks, and pigs. Once we said that, believe it or not, they would definitely not give us one. And they will be able to come up with a solution to the locust plague in a short time. Zhang Sun Wugo bit her lips and thought for a while. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Second brother? You mean to borrow a chicken to lay eggs? Use their chickens, ducks, and pigs to deal with the locusts in the Tang dynasty, and then send the news back to them. Then we can openly use this matter to—" "Yes," Li Shimin nodded approvingly. "But the key problem now is that no one knows how long this plague of locusts will last, not to mention next year's plague. Once that happens, then—" "Your Majesty, Prime Minister Wei requests an audience." At this moment, little Gizi's voice hurriedly sounded outside the imperial study. Li Shimin frowned slightly. "Declare." Zhang Sun Wugo struggled free from Li Shimin's hands. "Then I'll take my leave first." As they spoke, Zhang Sun and Wugo left when Wei Zhang and the others entered the imperial study. "Your subjects pay respects to your Majesty." "Get up," Li Shimin said sleepily. "What's the matter?" "Your Majesty, we are here for the livestock matter. This matter is far more serious than what Lord Lu said in today's morning court. Just now, we personally sent people to Chang'an City to take a look outside Chang'an City. The area around Long's-Ho Mountain and Shirley Slope outside Chang'an City were originally lush and green, but now, apart from bare tree trunks and rotten leaves, there is nothing else, and all the cattle and sheep are so hungry that they are only skin and bones. If we don't deal with them, then have you come up with any ideas?" Li Shimin interrupted Wei Zhang and the others and asked. Wei Zhang hesitated. "Now there are only two ways. One is to immediately start the operation to eliminate the locusts, and then gather all the cattle and sheep to the south. Then, send people 800 miles away and let the prefectures in the south immediately transfer the hay." Chang Yaojin sighed with a bitter face and said, "The livestock of the people outside Chang'an City are already like this. Your Majesty, the situation in the military camp is even worse. Then what do you want me to do? Do you want me to let the grass rain from the sky?" Li Shimin was angry. He waved his hand lightly. "Immediately distribute a large batch of bone-strengthening powder and let people spread the news within 3 days. At the same time, be sure to let all the royal businesses and the industries of the courtiers start to gather and purchase locusts. Then, let the local soldiers cooperate with the local government office to start the three-pronged control of the plague of locusts according to the previous method." Li Shimin was annoyed, but at this time the matter could not be delayed. If it was delayed, it would only make the people more panicky. Only by diverting the people's attention and making them focus on one place could this plague of locusts not go wrong. "By the way, Chang Yaojin, what about the matter I ordered you to investigate?" Chang Yaojin hurriedly said, "There is indeed a plague of locusts in the Turkic territory, and it is extremely disastrous. It seems that all the tribes are annexing and robbing each other of their resources. Have you found out that they have dealings with Tubo and other countries?" "Not yet." Li Shimin frowned and thought for a while. "Then have you spread the news to the Turkic people?" "Yes, I have." "Good. Then for now, put everything aside and be sure to focus all your energy on the Turkic people. If there is any movement in the Turkic people, report it immediately." "As you wish." Chapter 382. Following Li Shimin's order. In Chang'an City, under this order, in all the hidden corners, it was either the talkative woman, the idle beggar, the wanderer, the street wanderer, or even the storyteller and the fake Taoist priest who read palms. At this moment, all of them entered a secret chamber in a corner where no one was around. In the secret room, Fang Yai looked at them coldly. The moment they entered the room, they were no longer the same as they were outside. Everyone had a general name. That was the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Justice. "Greetings, Minister." "Get up," Fang Yai said lightly. "There's a new task today. It's a secret order from the Emperor." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly knelt on the ground respectfully. "There's only one thing today, and that is, no matter what method you use, you must spread the news that the locusts are the bone-strengthening powder throughout Chang and within 3 days. If anyone doubts or creates rumors, immediately lock down this person, trace all the information of this person, and then report back to me as usual. Yes. Minister, are these locusts really the raw material of the bone-strengthening powder? A man who looked like an old Taoist asked out of turn. A flash of impatience flashed across Wei Shuyu's face. Think more about the locust's eggs. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Yes. Hearing this, the old Taoist broke out in a cold sweat all over. Seeing that Wei Shuyu didn't say anything else, they hurriedly left the room. Only then did everyone heave a deep sigh of relief. They didn't communicate at all. Then, like strangers, they hurriedly converged into the streets and disappeared into the crowd. The next moment, in Chang'an City, a shocking news spread like wildfire. In the treasury, someone mistakenly mistook the bone-strengthening powder for porridge at the place where the disaster relief is distributed. As soon as the news came out, everyone was shocked. They all rushed into the treasury. Even those who were hiding at home and didn't dare to go out hurriedly took things like dustpans and hurriedly went out after hearing this. Not for anything else, but because this thing was said to be a good thing that could strengthen the yang and kidney and also make people immune to all kinds of diseases. What did all the people want? Wasn't it just to hope that there would be no illness or disaster? Furthermore, this item was an auspicious item bestowed by the heavens. For such a beautiful item to unexpectedly flow out of the treasury, how could this not be a pleasant surprise? Quick, let's go to the treasury. Something happened to the treasury. Isn't the granary in the treasury opening to release grain? Someone is selling 3 bags of bone-strengthening powder mixed in grain as flour. What? There's such a good thing? Let's go and take a look. The news spread faster and faster. In less than an hour, all the people in Chang'an City knew about it. In the end, even Zhang Feng heard about it. The old scholar looked at Zhang Feng strangely and asked, Fengzi, tell me honestly, where did you get the bone-strengthening powder you gave me before? Old man may be old, but he still has a brain. At this time, the news of the bone-strengthening powder had just come out from the treasury, and you had already gotten it 3 days ago. Could it be that you were the one who made this thing up? You and the emperor. Shoo! Zhang Feng put a finger to his lips and gestured for him to keep quiet. He was not afraid of anything except for this old guy's wild guess. This guy had seen the world, so he could fool other people, but he could not fool the old scholar. Old scholar, you actually know about this matter. Don't I know those stubborn guys before? Didn't you tell me to stay away from them? Zhang Feng spread his hands. That's a little difficult. Although these guys are sloppy all day, their nature is not bad. Moreover, these guys' fathers know me, and we even call each other brothers. They are businessmen, so which one of them doesn't know the officials? So, I'm lazy, so I cooperated with them on this business. Hey! The old scholar was furious. You prodigal son, do you know that this bone-strengthening powder is a chance for your Zhang clan to rise again in at most 1 year? Don't you want to contribute this thing to the emperor? Maybe the emperor will be happy and give you an official position. At that time, won't you be able to bring honor to your family? You wastrel! Old man is so angry. The old scholar was so angry that his beard was trembling. He had eaten 3 kilograms of this bone-strengthening powder. He believed that in Chang'an City, apart from himself, Granny Wang, Zhang Feng's future father-in-law, and the neighbors, they were the first to enjoy such a good thing. This thing could make one rich overnight. You wastrel, how could you give it to others just like that? Isn't it better to ask your father-in-law? Everyone knows the principle of keeping the goodies within the family. You idiot! Don't you understand this principle? The old scholar was so angry. He wanted to slap this wastrel to death. But now that he had given it to him, what else could he say? Zhang Feng was also listless. Being pointed at by the old scholar and yelled at, he was also a bit annoyed. But he was afraid that if he told the old scholar about his plan, his heart would explode and he would die on the spot. So he gritted his teeth and endured it. Old Shiotsai, there are some things that are not what you think. This business is easy, but if you don't know how to operate it, you will only bring death to yourself. So, you don't have to worry about this matter.